Tyrion Lannister awoke beneath a tapestry of shadows and half-remembered agony. Somewhere far above, the bells of the Great Sept tolled their mournful benediction. But here, in the shuttered hush of Maester Franken's recovery chamber, the sound arrived warped and distant, as though submerged beneath the Blackwater itself. His tongue tasted of copper and nightshade. His right hand drifted to the ragged stitches that traced from temple to jaw in a crooked, itching curve. When he dared to probe the edge of the bandage, his fingertips came away sticky, yet no one hurried to staunch the bleeding. No one cared to sit vigil at the MP's bedside. His father's victory had seen to that. Tyrion forced himself upright. Pain stabbed behind his eyes. The room lurched. A flagon of watered wine rested on the teetering table beside his cot, abandoned and warm. He drained it in 2 gulps, unmindful of the sediment that scratched his throat. Only then did he shuffle to the narrow lattice window. Dawn trembled beyond slate clouds, casting the still smoldering ruins along the river in brittle orange. Between leaning towers and gutted riverfront manzas, the Blackwater glimmered with oily green ghosts of wildfire, drifting like malign memories toward the sea. They will rebuild the quay in father's honor, he thought. They will chant Lord Tywin's name and forget the dwarf who broke the siege. A bitter smile cracked his stitches. Let them. He dressed himself without summoning a page, fumbling through the clothing piled at the foot of the cot. A doeskin doublet cut for a broader man hung loose across his shoulders. The second-hand cloak of dark wool reeked faintly of stable hay. That was fine. Anonymity had its comforts. With each buckle and tying of cord, he remembered who he had been before the battle, before the chain, before the wildfire. But those recollections rang hollow. Tyrion Lannister, master of coin and acting hand of the king, was a tale told in smoke. In the days since Lord Tywin's triumphant ride through the broken gates, Queen Cersei had reclaimed her brother's chambers in the Tower of the Hand. Sir Meryn's white-cloaked shadows stationed at every stair. Even Grand Maester Pycelle, returned stinking of cell rot and self-righteousness, deferred to father's judgment regarding the dwarf's future duties, which meant, in truth, none. What more could be taken from him? Only the air he breathed. He crossed the corridor in silence, nodding at the pair of Lannister guards flanking the stairwell. They allowed him passage, though neither troubled himself to hide a sneer. Below, the Red Keep stirred on the cusp of day. Ragged heralds cried news of the king's glorious deliverance. Smiths hammered twisted breastplates back into shape. Black-robed officials fussed over lists of compensation owed to extorted guilds. The city, like some enormous wounded beast, licked at its cauterized stumps and prepared to shamble onward. Tyrion's boots found the familiar route that threaded beneath the Maidenvault archway toward the gingerbread lattice of the Myrish Gardens. A private path once reserved for princes of House Targaryen, but now largely forgotten. There, beyond a chipped marble fountain green with moss, a lone figure waited. Varys, Lord Tyrion, the eunuch cooed, folding his soft hands within voluminous lavender sleeves. How splendid to see you upon your feet. I worried your injuries might confine you for weeks. My confinement is of a different sort, it seems, Tyrion replied. What have we learned this morning, Varys? Which wolf howls loudest at the capital's gates? The usual chorus, Varys said mildly. Some in the north still name Robb Stark king, though Harrenhal's smoking ruin inspires little hope. The riverlands bleed. Balon Greyjoy grows restless upon his driftwood throne. Meanwhile, Lord Stannis broods at Dragonstone, cursing the treacherous wildfire that stole his victory and the red comet that deceived him. Bender broods? Tyrion raised a brow. I heard he lost half his fleet and more than a quarter of his knights. That seems rather more than grounds for brooding. Varys' painted lips twitched. Lord Stannis is stubborn. Some men, when their cause falters, cling to righteousness like a drowning child to wreckage. A shameful vulnerability, wouldn't you agree? Bender. Tyrion studied the eunuch, searching for the trap concealed in those placid eyes. Varys rarely spoke without purpose, each syllable unfurled with calculated intent. Righteousness, he echoed. A commodity in short supply on both sides of the river, I'd wager. Indeed. Varys inclined his shaven head. Tell me, my lord, Do you intend to attend the king's Thanksgiving feast tonight? His Grace means to celebrate Lord Tywin as savior of the city. I am told there will be singers, jugglers, and a reenactment of the battle upon the Blackwater, complete with green-dipped torches. Now, will the dwarf play himself? Tyrion asked dryly. I fear the script omits certain roles. Tyrion laughed, though no mirth warmed the sound. Let them omit. I have my own supper plans. He turned, but Varys' feather-light touch upon his sleeve halted him. There are ships departing for Pentos this evening, the eunuch whispered. Neutral ports, unallied with Stannis or your father. A prudent course, perhaps, for a man who has devoted enough blood to this city. And no. Tyrion regarded the suggestion in silence. Pentos had its temptations. Myrish wines, expansive libraries, and the sweet promise of distance from Cersei's knives. Yet cowardly flight tasted of ashes. He had fought for King's Landing, not for Joffrey, not for Tywin, but for himself. Losing his station to politics was tolerable. Surrendering his agency was not. I thank you, he said at last. But no. A different journey calls me. He offered no further explanation and left Varys in the shadow of drooping willow branches. Shay awaited him in his disused chambers off the lower bailey, pacing across rush-strewn tiles. When Tyrion entered, she rushed forward, cupping his scarred cheek with trembling fingers. They told me you were still fevered. She murmured. Why are you wandering alone? Because no one else volunteers to escort me, he answered, allowing her to guide him to the bed. Her perfume, rose water and something wilder beneath, flooded his senses, grounding him. I must leave the city. Shay's brows knitted. No? You can barely stand. Precisely, why now? He took her hand. My father's shadow grows longer by the hour. If I linger, I'll find myself locked in some Lannisport holdfast, married off to a Frey girl with extra toes, my counsel ignored until needed to tally taxes. And where will you go? Tyrion drew a shallow breath. Dragonstone. She recoiled as though struck. Stannis' lair? He will kill you. Not if I make myself useful before he tries. Tyrion tried to sound confident, though a chill spidered through his ribs. I built the chain that broke his fleet. I know the wildfire stores he must avoid, the weaknesses in the mud gate, the mind of King Joffrey. Stannis prizes order. He will understand the value of a clever enemy turned ally. Shay's dark eyes shimmered with tears unshed. Why not hide across the narrow sea? We could sail tonight, you and I. And live on whose coin? He asked softly. I have friends in Pentos, yes, but friends who remember the debt my house once demanded of theirs. I am a Lannister without my father's purse strings. To them, I am a curiosity, not a benefactor. He thumbed the edge of her jaw. Run if you must. I would not chain you to my folly. Take the jewels I left in the strongbox. Sell them in Bravos, or Norvos, whichever harbor seems safest. Shay's mouth trembled. I won't leave you. You must. Stannis' castle is no place for what? She snapped. For a whore. You may change banners, my sweet lion, but some things travel with you. He closed his eyes, hating the truth of it. Then come as my paramour. Or my steward. I care not if the world sneers. He swallowed. But you must understand. The path ahead grows perilous. I cannot promise you comfort. Shay's reply came swift, fierce. I ask for no promises. She pressed her forehead to his. Only that you keep breathing. The cog that bore them from King's Landing slipped its moorings beneath the hush of pre-dawn mists. Tyrion stood at the stern rail, cloak snapping, the salt stinging his wound where the bandage lifted. Shay remained below decks, securing what belongings they had scavenged. Quills, inks, a handful of ledgers, a thin purse of silver stags. Nearby, Bronn lounged against a coil of tar-stiffened rope, one boot planted upon the gunwale. The sellsword had appeared at the river gate hours earlier, grim-faced and newly bereft of cloak or sigil. Sir Bronn of the Blackwater no longer, he had explained with a shrug. Your sister decided my knighthood need not include, continued Paemon. He spat. Thought I'd get drunk and drown a septon or two? Then I heard you were sailing. And you thought a voyage might offer better sport? Tyrion asked. I thought you'd still pay, Bronn corrected. Once we find a new purse to empty. He flashed teeth at the darkness upriver. Stannis can afford me, I reckon. Tyrion chuckled. When you see his treasurers scraping barnacles off the hulls for copper, perhaps you'll reconsider your rates. So long as there are battles, Bronn said. There is coin. The cog heaved seaward, the last orange flares of King's Landing fading behind rain-slick battlements. Tyrion watched until the silhouette of the Red Keep vanished within the fog, leaving only ghostly impressions where towers once pricked the sky. The city had been his cage and his crucible. He felt no sorrow at abandoning it, only an abiding curiosity about the shape of the next prison he would fashion for himself. Storms dogged their crossing. Autumn gales shredded the cog's patched sail and hurled wine-dark waves across the deck. Tyrion passed the hours in his cramped cabin, quill scratching upon vellum, drafting treatises on grain levies and harbor customs, figments of policy he hoped might tempt Stannis moneymen. Shay tended his bandages, humming soft pentoshi lullabies, while the hull groaned around them. In quieter moments, Bronn joined their cramped quarters to gamble tiles across the tabletop, flicking his dagger at the timbers each time he lost. On the fourth night, lightning cracked the horizon, illuminating Dragonstone's jagged silhouettes. Towers sculpted like twisted talons clawed at the clouds, gargoyles leered from basalt perches. No lanterns beckoned the cog toward safety. The captain, a gaunt man named Moreo Gisela, cursed in Myrish cant and ordered the oars deployed. Tyrion emerged onto the rain-slick deck, clutching the letter he had penned, ink now smudged despite its leather wrapping. Signal the harbor, he commanded. There is no harbor, Moreo muttered. Only rocks. Tyrion's gaze traced the serpentine causeway that slithered from mainland cliffs toward the fortress keep. Fires burned upon its heights, wavering orange specks against black stone. Someone watches. As well they should, Bronn remarked, squinting. Might be they'll let fly a few scorpions and lance us where we drift. They need information, Tyrion insisted, forcing conviction into the wind. We have worth. Worth. The word echoed hollowly as they threaded between submerged pillars, sails furled, hull grinding. At last, a skiff emerged from the gloom. 8 oarsmen clad in flapping oilskins. A single lantern bobbed at the prow, revealing an officer armored in scalloped steel. Hold, the officer called. Name your captain and your purpose, or we loose the catapults. Moreo raised trembling hands. Traitor out of Duskendale bound for Lys, forced off course by storm. Liar, Tyrion muttered. He stepped forward, waving his letter. I am Tyrion of House Lannister. Once hand to King Joffrey. I seek audience with Lord Stannis Baratheon to discuss terms. The wind snapped his cloak, revealing the crimson lions sewn upon its lining. The officer's lantern bobbed as he leaned to confer with another oarsman. Moments stretched, the surf booming. Tyrion's heartbeat thundered beneath his ribs, each pulse a reminder of how easily the sea might claim him. Then the officer barked, "Stand by! You will be towed to the quay. Any sudden move, and we cut your throats." Menserwand. Bronn smirked. Hospitable lot. They suffer no fools, Tyrion replied, but relief loosened a knot behind his scar. The skiff lashed lines to the cog's prow. Oars cut a slow crescent through frothing black, guiding them toward a half-ruined jetty jutting from the castle's flank. There, soldiers waited beneath dripping spears. Melting tallow cast their faces in molten hues. As Tyrion's boots found the slick stones, Shay pressed beside him, clutching his arm. Bronn trailed, one hand never straying far from his sword. An officer signaled, and they were marched single file through a yawning archway carved between the feet of twin dragons. Their breath steamed in the chill tunnel. Torches sputtered, revealing ancient murals, Aegon's conquest rendered in sweeping strokes of crimson and jade. The flickering light played across Tyrion's scar, transforming it into a living thing upon his face. At length, They reached the stone steps that spiraled into the belly of Dragonstone Keep. A door scraped open above, bathing the stairwell in warm candle glow. Tyrion blinked against the sudden brightness. Lord Stannis Baratheon awaited upon a narrow dais, his jaw clenched, blue eyes colder than the wind off Shipbreaker Bay. He wore plain steel, unmarred by jewels or sigils, though the stags of House Baratheon stamped his sword belt. At his side stood Sir Davos Seaworth, hands still swathed in snowy linen where missing fingers should have been. And a pace behind, half obscured by pillars, loomed Lady Melisandre, scarlet silks whispering as though alive. Tyrion bowed. "Your Grace." Stannis' mouth twitched. Disdain or amusement, it was hard to say. "Grace," he repeated. "Here I see only a leal subject of Joffrey Baratheon, come to boast of the wildfire that burned my men." "I come to atone," Tyrion said, "and to offer counsel in place of contrition. War favors the prepared mind, my lord." Sir Davos shifted. "Why betray your blood?" "Blood has betrayed me," Tyrion answered, "and may well betray you if left unchecked. King's Landing celebrates a victory paid for by my ingenuity, but credited to Lord Tywin's punctuality. I would repay that injustice in kind." Stannis' fingers drummed the pommel of his sword. "Lannisters breed perfidy like rats breed filth." "Why trust the words of the dwarf?" "Because I value truth," Tyrion said, voice steady. "You wish to sit the Iron Throne. I wish to see my family stripped of it. Our desires align." A long silence swallowed the chamber. From the corridor beyond drifted the distant boom of surf. Melisandre's ruby choker pulsed faintly, as though a heartbeat quickened on unseen flesh. Tyrion met her gaze, feeling its heat. She frightened him more than Stannis' frown, yet he did not look away. At last, Stannis inclined his head a fraction. "An admission of consideration, nothing more. We shall test your loyalty." "I expected no less." "You will dine with me this eve," Stannis said. "Tomorrow, you will draft a full accounting of the Red Keep stores, garrison numbers, and the disposition of Tywin Lannister's host." "If you lie, I won't," Tyrion assured. "But I will require parchment, ink, and a pitcher of ale that doesn't taste of bilge." Stannis' lips almost curved. "Almost. We keep honest drink in Dragonstone." He gestured to a guard. "See that Lord Tyrion and his companions are given quarters." "Not too comfortable." As the soldiers escorted them from the hall, Tyrion allowed himself a slow exhale. Step 1 survived. Whether steps 2 through 10 ended in a dagger across his throat remained an open wager. But at least the game continued. Their assigned chambers hid within the Sea Dragon Tower, cramped as monk cells, the windows arrow slits overlooking the churning bay. Shae lit the single candle and helped Tyrion collapse onto the narrow cot. He winced as the mattress creaked. Even simple exertion tugged at his stitches. Shae brushed damp curls from his brow. "Is he convinced?" she whispered. "Not yet," Tyrion replied. "But I glimpsed curiosity in his eyes, and that is a lever." He reached beneath his tunic, withdrawing the rolled parchments he had concealed there. Records of King's Landing's grain shipments, schematics of the Mudgate's reinforcement, lists of every sellsword company paid by the crown in recent months. "By morning, I will have purchased trust with ink and figures." Shae's gaze flicked to the parchment. "And if the figures are not enough, then I shall spin gold from words," Tyrion said lightly, though dread coiled in his gut. "I have done so before." Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Bronn appeared at the threshold, candle guttering in his fist. "Guards posted at both ends," he reported. "No one gets in or out without Stagman's say-so." He smirked. "Still, I've seen worse prisons." "Have you?" Tyrion asked. Bronn shrugged. "At least this one comes with a view." Shae retreated to the cot opposite, though her eyes never left Tyrion. Exhaustion weighted her lids, yet she refused to surrender to rest until he did. Tyrion laid back, staring up at the low ceiling. Salt wind slithered through the slit window, rattling shutters. He considered the road ahead, persuading Stannis' proud bannermen to accept a dwarf's counsel. Thwarting Melisandre's glaring suspicions, devising supply lines when their coffers sputtered like spent candles. He pictured his father's scowl upon learning of his defection. The seething fury hidden behind Lion's gold eyes. The thought almost warmed him. Sleep came fitfully. Dreams of green fire-licking riverbanks gave way to visions of a throne forged from swords, each blade bearing the faces of men he had condemned. Simon Silvertongue's leering grin, brave Podrick's innocent stare, Shay's expressive eyes darkened with betrayal. He woke before dawn, sweat cooling his skin, resolving that these phantoms would not decide his fate. Outside, gulls shrieked over roiling surf. Tyrion swung his legs over the cot, reaching for the inkpot and stack of fresh parchment, delivered sometime in the night. He set quill to page, letting numbers flow. The city's lifeblood he alone had measured. As columns multiplied, his mind leapt ahead. If Stannis marched by land, the haystacks of the Crownlands could feed 20,000 for half a season. If by sea, Lys might lend galleys for a price payable in future tariffs, gold cloaks in the capital might be turned with silver stags and promises of rank. Each cunning contingency carried a price written in unknown blood. Tyrion felt the weight of it, yet a strange exhilaration hummed beneath his ribs. At Blackwater, he had fought for survival. Here, upon this grim island, he would fight for something more elusive. Relevance, destiny, perhaps even a shard of justice. Shay stirred, bleary. "Can't it wait?" She murmured. "Not if we intend to live," he answered gently. The council chamber into which Tyrion was summoned at midday boasted none of the Red Keep's gilded ostentation. Stone benches encircled a rough-hewn map table shaped like Westeros, ridges and valleys carved by Aegon's artisans 3 centuries past. Stannis stood at the northern edge, fingers tracing the neck where swamps swallowed armies. Sir Davos lingered near the fingers, while Maester Pylos shuffled parchments by the arbor. Tyrion advanced, placing his compiled ledgers upon the Dragonstone Peninsula. "You asked for numbers," he said. Stannis accepted the sheaf, scanning. His eyes narrowed. "You served as master of coin?" "Acting," Tyrion admitted. "But long enough to know the crown is drowning in debt to the Iron Bank. Your cause might court Braavo's favor by promising repayment. A gesture of good faith. A raven ought do." "And these wildfire caches?" Davos asked, tapping a page. 76 jars remain beneath the Guildhall of Alchemists. The pyromancers will claim hundreds, but I inspected their vaults. They exaggerate. Tyrion met Davos' gaze levelly. "Remove them before King's Landing does. Or better, deny their existence until your sails darken Blackwater Bay." Stannis folded the ledger. "You come armed with useful lies, Lord Tyrion. Yet you admit to needing gold. How shall we fund a new war?" "Tax the narrow sea," Tyrion said at once. "Tariffs on Pentoshi wine, Myrish silks, Volantine jade. They drink, they drape, they deal, and Dragonstow's straits sit athwart their roots. Offer safe passage for a modest fee. A policy your brother, gods rest him, dismissed as beneath royal dignity." He allowed a wry smile. "Dignity is expensive." Davos looked thoughtful. "Ships will sail round the stepstones to avoid the toll. Then lease galleys to patrol those channels," Tyrion countered. "Confiscate vessels that refuse inspection. Smugglers gamble margins, make the gamble unprofitable." Stannis regarded him with an expression perilously close to intrigue. "We shall debate it further." He gestured for Tyrion to approach the table's southern coast. "Show me where my brother's army skulks." Tyrion leaned in, tracing the Roserad toward Bitterbridge. Sir Mace Tyrell summoned his banners inland to secure the reach. He will not quit Highgarden while harvest is underway. Tywin Lannister holds Harrenhal, but must soon march west to relieve his seat at Casterly Rock, threatened by Ironborn raiders. The capital lies guarded by a patchwork of Tyrell levies and gold cloaks who resent their new masters. If struck swiftly, Stannis' palm smacked the table. "I will strike when vows are renewed at Dragonstone. Each lord who bent knee upon the beach must witness the flames burn brighter." Tyrion followed his gaze to Melisandre, poised in the corner. Her ruby glowed as though lit from within. "The Lord of Light requires fealty," she murmured. "As do kings," Stannis growled. "But faith alone wins no sieges. Lord Tyrion will revise our intake ledgers. Sir Davos, see that ships of Black Betha's size ferry provisions from Gulltown. Maester Pylos, quills and wax for 12 ravens to the Stormlands. House Karen? Any who still remember Robert's name? Nendawandi. Endawal." The council dispersed with military swiftness. Tyrion paused, sensing Melisandre's eyes upon him. She drifted forward, silk whispering. "Shadow and flame swirl about you, Lion Man." "I've been close to fire," he answered wearily. "It leaves marks." "Some marks reveal," she said, fingers hovering near his scar but never touching. "Others consume. The night is dark, Lord Tyrion. Beware what prowls within." He mustered a crooked smile. "I spent most of my life in darkness, my lady. I am familiar with its teeth." Her answering smile was serene, unreadable. "We shall see." By week's end, Tyrion had settled into a rhythm of midnight reckonings and dawn councils. He prowled Dragonstone's warrens, quill tucked behind ear, commandeering alcoves as temporary offices. Shay, disguised in plain gown and borrowed wimple, served as his scribe, copying manifests while Bronn drilled with Stannis' cell sails upon the beach, blades flashing under gray skies. Tyrion discovered a perverse satisfaction in the island's austerity. There were no feasts squandered upon peacocks, stuffed with finch tongues, no minstrels warbling praise of royal prowess. Supper was barley stew and hard bread, served at the long hall where knights and squires alike shared benches. Conversation revolved around sailcloth repairs, arrow fletching, and the timing of the next tide. It was during one such supper that Sir Davos approached, seating himself across the board. Candlelight accentuated the smuggler's weathered skin, the honest furrow of his brow. "His grace means to trust you," Davos said without preamble. "He values good sense, and gods know he's surrounded by precious little." Tyrion soaked a crust in broth. "Not long ago." "Sir Davos, I aimed scorpion bolts at your liege. I appreciate the swiftness of your acceptance." Davos shrugged. "Men may serve different kings and still respect one another's skill." He lowered his voice. "But if you mislead him, if your numbers send us hungry into winter, my respect won't spare you." Tyrion dipped his head. "Understood." Davos' gaze softened. "I lost 4 sons in the Blackwater. I've no taste for more fruitless bloodshed. Yet Stannis believes victory still possible, and I swore to follow him. If you can shorten the war, I'll count you blessing enough." "Ben?" "4 sons." Tyrion's chest tightened. He pictured burning river, screaming men flailing amid green fire. "For their sakes," he said quietly, "I will try." Night deepened over Dragonstone. Tyrion labored in a narrow turret chamber, candle nearing its nub. Scrolls of parchment surrounded him, littered with ciphered tallies of barley stocks, projected attrition, and galley ransoms' freight capacity. Beyond the slit window, the waves boomed, eternal percussion to his quill's scribble. A single tap sounded at the door. He expected Shay, come to cajole him toward bed, but when the portal opened, Stannis Baratheon himself filled the threshold. "My lord?" Tyrion pushed aside his ledgers. "To what do I owe the—" "Spare me courtesies," Stannis said, stepping inside. "Pylos speaks of a levy upon lantern fishers to supply lamp oil for the fleet. Your idea? An unavoidable tax," Tyrion admitted. "But modest. Without night beacons, your transports risk reefs." Stannis closed the door behind him. "You advise as though Dragonstone were your ancestral seat." "I advise as though I intend to survive the coming war." Stannis studied him with that unblinking gaze. "Tell me, dwarf, do you truly believe I can claim the throne?" Tyrion hesitated, sensing peril. "I believe King's Landing is weaker than your brother's songs suggest. And I believe Tywin Lannister's victories rely on coin more than loyalty. Coin can be spent. Loyalty must be earned. Answer the question." Tyrion rested his hands atop parchment. "Yes. Provided your fleet can outmaneuver the red wine ships guarding Blackwater Bay. Provided your Stormland banners rally before spring melts the roads. Provided... Enough. Stannis' voice was quiet iron. You speak of provisions and ship counts. Yet wars turn on men's faith. Renly won hearts with charm. Robert with valor. What wins me hearts, imp? Justice, Tyrion said instantly. The realm craves an even hand. The small folk curse royal whim that burns their huts for wildfire stockpiles. They will march behind a man who punishes the high and mighty as swiftly as he hangs the poacher. Men know. Stannis' jaw flexed. Justice. He tasted the word like sour wine. I shall hold you to it. He turned to go, then paused. When we sail, you will ride at my side as Queen's hand. Tyrion blinked. Queen? Princess Shireen, Stannis corrected coldly. But one day, she will be queen, and she will remember who served her father. A strange warmth spread through Tyrion's scarred cheek. Then I pray we give her a kingdom worth ruling. Stannis nodded once and departed. Cloak billowing. Tyrion exhaled, unsure whether he had been granted honor or chain. Perhaps both. He looked to the litter of scrolls and quills, the ink staining his fingers, and felt a stirring not of dread but anticipation. For the first time since the wildfire's green glare had seared the night, he sensed a future unfolding, uncertain, yes, but wrought by his own design. In his mind's eye, the Iron Throne loomed, distant yet possible. Not for him, never for him, but he might shape the man who claimed it, and in shaping, etch his name upon history's iron. Tyrion dipped quill to ink, and bent once more to the ledger, the candle's final inch sputtering, while dawn lingered just beyond the horizon. Ka. Sea spray drummed against the narrow window panes as dawn broke in sickly pinks, and the War Council reconvened. Tyrion stood at the western curve of the painted table, one hand steadying a goblet, the other tracing ridges on the carved map's shoreline, as if his fingertips alone could feel the pulse of each fief. Sleep had abandoned him halfway through the darkest watch. Numbers still chased one another behind his eyelids. Bushel weights, sailcloth yardage, the half-life of stale barley. Yet he felt alert, alive, a humming wire strung tight between danger and discovery. Stannis arrived without herald or flourish, and conversation flattened beneath the hard soles of his boots. His gaze settled first on the scroll. Tyrion had finished an hour earlier. A proposed embargo on Lannister copper exported through Maidenpool. Beside it sat a ledger recalculating the coin value of every bannerless free rider in the Crown Lands. Stannis lifted the sheets, expression unchanging, but his silence bore a gravity that made Maester Pylos swallow twice before speaking. The tongue of trade is persuasive, Pylos ventured. A strangled purse can bruise deeper than a sword point, sire. Assuming the purse strangles when you pull, Davos added. His weather-creased face creased further as he squinted at the small, spidery sums. If the smugglers slip through, King's Landing keeps its coin, and we lose faith. Tyrion dipped quill to ink. Then we cork the stepstones with patrols. 2 galleys per channel. Oared, armored, answering to commanders whose first loyalty is their purse. Smugglers count risk, double it, and the arithmetic shifts. Stannis' knuckles whitened on the parchment edge. And if the Tyrells counter with escort fleets of their own, then we bleed them by degrees. Tyrion tapped the arbor on the carved map. Wine must sail north before the casks sour. Intercept 1 convoy in 3, pour the cargo into the sea. The threat will force the Reach to guard every keel, stretching them thin. He set the quill down. Wars aren't won only on fields, my lord. Sometimes the victors are the last men who can afford to shoe a horse. Stannis made a low sound. Perhaps agreement, perhaps gastric displeasure. He shifted to the map's southern sweep where Dragonstone lay like a sculpted claw. Steel and sail are still required. My levies stand ready, but each moon of delay dulls the blade. How would you answer that? Men? By turning the blade inward, Tyrion said. House Redwine's admirals man those escort fleets. Offer them amnesty for their blockade runners and a double tariff share if they defect. Pulse beat at his temple, fierce. They are merchants at heart. Give them richer harbors than high gardens. Davos' brow furrowed. You would tempt Lord Paxter's kin to treason. I would remind Lord Paxter that no harvest grows in fields scorched by war. Tyrion sipped the watery wine. Men are seldom loyal to ruin. Stannis' lips compressed. Draft the letters. Keep them sealed until I judge the moment. Men sir. Tyrion inclined his scarred cheek. You shall have them by nightfall. The council dispersed once logistics had been assigned like tithes. Pylus left muttering about raven quills, Davos about Hultar. Only Melisandre remained, unmoving at the hall's edge, firelight skimming the rubies sewn into her cuffs. Tyrion sensed her scrutiny but refused to acknowledge it until her shadow fell across the painted table. The night whispers around you, she said, voice low, musical, wholly unconcerned with the damp chill. A coil of gray and gold. Smoke still clings to your breath. Do you taste it? No. Tyrion closed the ledger. I taste ink and stale wine. Her smile curved, faint as candle flame. You joke as a wall against fear. Fear keeps men breathing. He met her eyes, molten depths unsettling as wild firepots. Tell me, my lady, does your Lord of Light enjoy coin counts and freight schedules? Or is he above such sordid trifles? Lore is in all things that burn. She laid a palm almost tenderly atop the carved table, over the capital city rendered in warped relief. Gold melts in hotter fires. A throne, too. Yet one must first feed the forge. Tyrion gave a small bow. I shall ensure the fuel arrives on time. Her fingers tapped twice, a silent toll. Should those fuels ignite in ways you do not expect, remember. Shadows born of man's blood obey one master only. He understood the threat cloaked in mysticism. And coin obeys none, he said softly. That is why both bear watching. She regarded him another moment, then turned, red silks whispering secrets to the stone. Tyrion exhaled after she left, shoulders sagging. Alone, he traced the ring of King's Landing's miniature walls and wondered which fate waited for him first, Red Shadow or Golden Lion. The weeks that followed unfolded like taut threads in rough-spun cloth. Wind howled most nights, rattling shutters as autumn bled toward winter, yet Dragonstone thrummed with discipline. Ships arrived from the Sisters with crates of pickled cod and blocks of salt pork. From Gulltown came tar barrels and pine planks to patch worm-eaten hulls. Tyrion prowled the docks daily, adjusting manifests, promising back pay to sailors whose loyalty sagged like slack rigging. He found purchase in the repetition of tasks, each solved equation pushing back the gnawing memory of wildfire screams. Shay adapted with surprising ease. She befriended the island's washerwomen, traded pentoshi recipes for gossip, and funneled every hint of discontent back to Tyrion's parchment. The garrison's younger squires quickly learned that a kind word or a copper coin might earn them time near the pretty dark-haired steward. Tyrion paid every gossip's fee without flinch, and information flowed like brine through scupper holes. Bronn, meanwhile, flourished in chaos. He drilled crossbowmen on the sea cliffs until their fingers blistered, wagered his pay against Stormlander knights in knife-throwing contests, and, twice, was hauled before Davos for brawling. Each time he emerged, shrugging, bruises dark on his jaw. Purse fatter than before. Storms came harder as the moon changed. One slate morning, a battered Lyseni caravel limped into harbor, rigging torn to floss, half her crew coughing blood. They brought bleak tidings. Tywin Lannister had marched from Harrenhal west, leaving Sir Gregor to garrison the ruin while he rode for Casterly Rock. Behind him, Mace Tyrell's banners swelled around Bitterbridge, and everywhere, small folk complained of new taxes to fund a second Royal Navy. The war machine ground forward still, but its joints creaked. Tyrion presented the news before council that night, lamplight painting his scar deeper. King's Landing bleeds coin faster than any leech pot can drain. He planted a chart, lines plunging like cliff faces upon the map's edge. Tyrell coffers cushion the fall, but resentment festers. Breadlines already riot in Flea Bottom. If we stir the pot. Stir? Davos echoed. A rumor perhaps of Tyrell ships withholding grain until the queen returns their hostage brother from the cells. Tyrion drained half a cup. Let the city believe their savior starved them. A few riots more, and gold cloaks will be posted to defend manors instead of walls. Bender. Stannis pondered, jaw chewing on nothing. Every riot costs lives of men who serve no banner. And every siege costs more, Tyrion answered. Never forget the purse. Melisandre observed, silent as a stake of red glass in shadow. Her gaze never left Tyrion. Through December's dying light, letters sailed on swift gullback ravens. Some flew south to Old Town's cobbled archives seeking records of grain hoards, others east to Braavos promising restitution. Not all found perch, a dozen were loosed, 6 returned shredded by hawk or arrow. Yet enough landed to sow doubts in merchant counting houses, and casks of Reach wine began arriving with seals already pried, plundered on open sea by men who swore fealty to no lord and every purse. Tyrion stood upon the Sea Dragon Tower one harsh twilight, cloak whipping, as men below shaped storm-felled trunks into new scorpion arms. The boom of waves swallowed their hammers. He felt a presence before the door creaked. Davos beside him, handless arm crossed over the other. You risk much with these letters. The knight said. Some will name it dishonor. Quiet knives in the dark. Tyrion's breath fogged. Call it pruning. If you cannot topple the tree entire, cut roots one by one. They will hunt the gardener when they find the axe. Tyrion gave a rueful smile. They always do. He watched gulls wheel over Blackwater, then turned. Tell me truth, Onion Knight. Does your king resent my counsels? Truth? Davos considered the surf. Stannis resents breathing when the air stinks of compromise. But he listens. Some nights that is worth more than crowns. Damned. And you? I buried 4 sons for him. A man who gives that much must decide whether he follows out of love or nothing left. I follow because I see justice flickering in him, though the wind tries to snuff it. Davos met Tyrion's eyes. You fan the flame. Keep it honest, not hungry. A gull shrieked overhead, wings beating the gale. Tyrion nodded. I will. Nights grew colder, and with them came Melisandre's fires. On the first new moon of the year, she summoned every soul not on watch to the beach, where a pyre of driftwood rose like a siege tower crowned by an effigy of straw and tar. Beneath banners of the fiery heart, soldiers pressed close, faces streaked by flame. Tyrion stood between Shay and Bronn, feeling heat blister his cheeks as Melisandre's voice rose in ancient Valyrian, a song or invocation he could not parse. When the effigy's belly burst and sparks spiraled skyward, the crowd roared, but to Tyrion the crackle of pine sap sounded like bones splitting. He glimpsed Stannis, posture rigid, gaze reflecting gold. How many doubts lurked behind those eyes? After the flames died, ash snowed upon the beach until every helm wore gray. The morning after, ships sailed. Black Betha led the line, masts straining, followed by Fury and 3 drab-painted Lyseni hulks, bought cheap with promissory notes signed by Stannis and countersigned by Tyrion. The fleet hugged the coast, hidden beneath cliffs where gull droppings stained rock white. Each vessel carried archers, barrels of pitch, and sacks of rusted coin minted in Maegor's reign. Seed for bribes Tyrion intended to scatter across every hamlet from Duskendale to Rosby. He remained ashore with Stannis, drafting proclamations for Stormland holdfasts. Amnesty for lordlings who bent knee before first snowfall, daggers for those who dallied. When the ravens launched, Tyrion climbed the ramparts alone, watching sails diminish and wondering whether any would return unburned. Time slipped again, marked by the arrival of ravens and sheets of sleet that glazed the courtyards. Word reached them of Paxter Redwine's privateers sighted off the Arbor, too far west to aid King's Landing. Another message told of riots in Cobbler's Square. 3 grain warehouses torched by starving mobs. Any of a dozen seeds may have sprouted those flames. Tyrion's letter might be one among them. Indistinguishable and deadly. Stannis pressed advantage. Under cover of rain, Davos guided a flotilla of longboats up Massey's Hook, landed 300 men at Hayford, and captured Lord Hayford's heir asleep in his feather bed. 2 more Crownland houses declared for the true king, chasing a rumor, also penned by Tyrion, that Lord Tywin meant to trade their sons to the Dothraki for war steeds. Politic warfare bred paranoia in equal measure. Varys' whispers reached even Dragonstone. A half-remembered childhood tutor arrested for passing tales. A septon flogged for preaching of shadows. Tyrion read each cryptic report with tightening throat. Varys' little bird sang softly of Cersei's ire and father's cold fury, and somewhere amid that symphony his own name rang out as traitor. The sea now stood between him and every tear of the lion's claw. Not far enough, he feared. Late one damp night, Shay found him hunched over a portable desk in their chamber, eyes gritty, hand cramped around quill. Candle stub flickered. "You will burn yourself to wick," she murmured, nudging parchment aside to sit on the cot. The boards creaked. "Come to bed. Soon." He capped the ink. "I balance treasuries tighter than a Braavosi sword dancer. One wrong figure, and the sword takes your head." She traced the scar on his face, gentler now with months healed. "You chase numbers as if they are lions themselves. Will they pounce if you shut your eyes?" "Numbers never sleep," he said, voice frayed. "But I can close them in a ledger long enough to rest." He sighed. "A moment, my love. Not too long." She kissed his brow, leaving faint warmth. "I tire of sharing you with ghosts." When the door closed, Tyrion sat listening to her footsteps fade down the corridor. Guilt pressed heavy. Shay asked little. Warm food, warmer laughter, moments of privacy amid political storm. Yet each day his parchment-spawned webs tugged him further, and he felt the threads strain. He rose, crossed to the arrow slit, and let salt wind cut through thought. Far below, torches patrolled the seawall. Where those flames sputtered, blackness reigned. A tapestry of void. Somewhere in that dark, ships carried his words to men who would live or die for lines he drew. Power, he realized, was no crown. It was parchment and pulse, the quiver of ink as decisions hardened, and the weight of it could crack bone. 7 days after the fleet departed, a single galley returned under cover of fog. Sails torn but upright. Davos stepped onto the quay first, face set in grim satisfaction. Behind him shuffled 3 men in chains, minor Stormland lords once loyal to Joffrey. Their standards lay bundled in burlap, crimson stag sigils over a golden crown sewn upside down as insult. In the great hall, Stannis heard their pleas for clemency, and, on Tyrion's counsel, granted it, but exacted from each a tithe of horses and grain to be delivered by first thaw. When the captives were led away, Stannis turned to Tyrion, iron in his gaze. "Numbers bear fruit," he said. "You will draft fresh missives to every holdfast east of the Roserad, offer clemency, demand hostages, 1 son or daughter from each lord. If they refuse—" "They won't," Tyrion assured, though inside he wondered. Fear is a sharp spur. Fear bends quicker with hope. Davos leaned on his good arm. "Show them a path back to honor." Tyrion scribbled as they spoke, melding carrot and cudgel in careful phrase. When night fell, ravens beat wings north and west, scattering promises across frost-veined skies. That same evening, Melisandre requested a private audience. She ushered Tyrion into a lower chamber seldom used. Walls of black stone damp with salt, a single brazier hissing red. No furniture, no guards. Only her and the flame. She gestured for him to sit on the floor opposite. Wariness prickled, but curiosity won. He folded short legs beneath him, cloak pooling. "You weave clever snares," she began, voice soft. "Threads of ink, knots of doubt. Yet snares catch beasts, not shadows. Then, oh, I'll snare what I can." Tyrion watched flames dance. If shadows escape, perhaps they fill someone else's cup. She tilted her head. "You doubt our lore? You fear my sorcery?" "Fear what I don't understand, yes. Doubt. I doubt even myself some mornings." She smiled, almost kind. "The Lord's light reveals truth. Gaze." She stretched a hand over the brazier, fingers white in heat. Sparks leapt like fireflies, coalescing until an image shimmered within the heart of the coals. King's Landing's walls, red and gold banners drooping under smoke, crowds surging. Tyrion leaned closer. He saw Tyrell shields crushed against a barricade, saw gold cloaks shove children aside, saw green wildfire glare inside a barred gatehouse poised to burst. His breath caught. Is this now? Perhaps tomorrow. Perhaps yesterday. She whispered. Time curls in flame. Possibility. Her ruby glowed. But know this. Should the city burn anew, the lion will roar for blood. Its first leap may land upon this island. Da. Tyrion swallowed. Then I must ensure the roar finds only water. She let the vision wane. Fire shows paths, not destinations. Choose well, Lion of Tongues. Rising, she drew his palm to her ruby so its heat pulsed against his skin. In darkness, purpose is flame. When she left, the chamber felt colder, the ember in his palm throbbing like a heartbeat. Purpose, yes, but whose? Winter's first snows dusted Dragonstone's battlements before the fleet returned in full. Sails sagged with rime, but holds bulged with salted mutton, barrels of barley, even casks of arbor gold seized from a brave but luckless merchantman. Davos reported only modest loss. One galley captured by Tyrell outriders, another grounded in shoals. Overall, a victory. Stannis announced a feast, austere by Reach standards yet lavish for Dragonstone. Onion soup, whole cod basted in garlic, and a single roast boar belching rosemary. Soldiers cheered. Shay danced with squires. Bronn arm wrestled a Myrish pikesman and won a pouch of saffron. The hall rang with a merriment seldom seen. Tyrion, however, drank sparingly. Between courses he caught Stannis's eyes across the table, saw the furnace banked behind them. This feast was not celebration, it was breath before plunge. Sure enough, 2 mornings later horns woke the keep. Sailors on watch had spotted black smoke pillars 15 leagues north, drifting from Nassau's Horn. Scouts returned by dusk. The Lannister fleet, dozens of new-built cogs bristling with scorpions, had sailed from King's Landing with Tyrell banners at mast, anchoring off Massey's Hook to blockade Dragonstone's supply routes. Word spread like oil on water. Council convened in the candlelit war room. Tyrion counted commanders. Davos, his face set. Sir Gilbert Faring nursing a bandaged forearm. Sir Saladhor Saan swaggering dripping salt on the flagstones. Even Melisandre, eyes half-lidded behind the ruby glow. At the head Stannis stood. The foe cages us. He opened. Voice gravel. We break cage or starve. Maps unfurled. Sail routes scribbled. Saladhor urged a sly nighttime sally with fire ships. Davos countered that winter winds favored none. Tyrion listened, weighing risk, until silence opened like a wound. He stepped forward. There is a third path, he began, and all eyes swung. Blockades rely on fear of what waits beyond. Remove that fear at the source. Stannis crossed arms. Speak plainly. Strike. Not the fleet, but the purse behind it. King's Landing funds this blockade with Tyrell gold. Gold flows through the Iron Bank. The Iron Bank respects debt above steel. Tyrion licked cracked lips. Send me to Braavos. With the ledgers we seized from Hayford and Massey's Hook, I will prove the Crown's insolvency. Convince the bank that backing Joffrey invites default. They will halt loans, seize Lannister collateral, raise interest until Cersei chokes. Then? Davos' brow rose. Sailing to Braavos through that blockade invites scorpion bolts. Not by sea, Tyrion answered. Overland in disguise to Gulltown, then on a Pentoshi galley north of Skagos, escorted by Saan's fastest sloop. Winter hides small ships well. Stannis eyed the map's sweep. And you think the Iron Bank will listen to a dwarf trader? I think they'll listen to arithmetic. Tyrion tapped a ledger. Numbers never sleep, remember? A beat. Torches crackled. Finally Stannis nodded once. Prepare. You sail within 3 days. Shay protested when she heard, their voices low in their chamber. a gale hammering shutters. Braavos is farther than Pentos. She hissed. What if you never return? Then you will be free, he said, though it tasted sour. Take whatever coin is owed and live how you choose. I choose you, fool lion. Tears rimmed her lashes but did not spill. If you die chasing columns, who will write poems to remember you? He pulled her close. If I succeed, songs will write themselves. If I fail, there will be few to mourn. He kissed her hair until her trembling eased. Come dawn, help me pack. And after, should the sails not return, take ship for Myr. There are actors there who need clever women. She slapped his arm, weak but fond. I am no actor. You are anything you wish. At dawn, Tyrion delivered final logistics to Davos, embraced Bronn with a sardonic warning to keep off any cliffs until his return, and with Stannis writ concealed beneath plain wool cloak, boarded a fishing skiff bound for Sharp Point. Snow fell, clinging to rigging, cloaking the water in mist. The voyage east was a blur of salt spray and frozen rope burns. From Sharp Point they trudged on rented nags through half-flooded trails until Gultan's white walls rose out of incense fog. There Tyrion chartered a lean black-hulled galley crewed by Braavos, who prized secret cargoes. Winter winds bore them north, hugging the narrow sea's fringe where shoals lacerated deeper draft foes. In his cramped cabin, Tyrion pored over ledgers, annotating each deadline with the precision of a jeweler setting stones. For every figure he recalled Tywin's blunt mantra, a Lannister always pays his debts, and smiled to think how failure now loomed to kneecap that certainty. Weeks passed in insulated tension. On the last dawn before landfall, gulls shrieked overhead. Tyrion emerged to see the Titan of Braavos looming, bronze and terrible, its brazier eyes smoldering against pewter sky. Somewhere beyond those colossus legs, the Iron Bank vaulted marble sat like a pearl. Cold, implacable, swayed only by numbers. They docked inside the purple canal's hush. Tyrion and 2 hired guards disembarked, cloaked as Lyseni wool merchants. Shae was not with him, for he had left her in Gulltown disguised as a spice widow to evade suspicion. The parting had carved him inside, but risk to her life had carved deeper. Braavos smelled of olive brine and wet coins. He wound through alleys toward the Iron Bank, each step echoing off sea-worn stone. At the bank's door, carved cedar slathered in lacquer. He presented Stannis' writ and his own signet. Stern clerks ushered him through vaulted halls until he faced 3 magisters clad in black velvet. He unrolled the ledgers on an ebony table polished to mirror glaze. Numbers glinted like spearheads. Your crown owes 62 million gold dragons, he opened. Voice steady despite clammy palms. Payments missed thrice in 2 years. Interest alone now blooms faster than King's Landing can mint coin. And Casterly Rock's veins run thin. Ask any smith buying ingots. The realm's collateral devalues by the moon. He slid forward Pylus-attested copies of mine yields, Stormland grain tallies, and Tyrell loan receipts. Magister Falar frowned, reading by light of a hanging glass globe. Tyrion pressed on. Investors know a sinking ship when the bilge rises. Hedge your risk. Fund Stannis Baratheon's claim instead. He is flint, stiff, honest, and ready to honor debt promptly. His advisors, Tyrion allowed a small smile, specialize in coin retrieval. For hours they questioned each ledger line, each margin note. Tyrion answered until voice cracked. Finally, the magisters withdrew. He waited in a frigid anteroom, watching doors, calculating if he could bribe guards should wrong decision return. When the panel opened, Magister Falar bowed. Shallow but present. The Iron Bank thanks you for diligent presentation, Falar intoned. Our ledgers will adjust. A raven will reach Dragonstone within the fortnight, outlining revised credit lines. Tyrion exhaled so sharply he swayed. May profit favor the prudent, he managed. Outside, Braavos canals glittered under lanterns. He walked in stunned relief to the inn where he lodged. The quiet quill, ordered spiced rum, and let winter melt for a span. Yet triumph birthed only momentary warmth. Fear crept swift behind. If the bank cut crown credit, Cersei would know who swung the axe. She would roar indeed. That night, an urchin slipped him a note, sealed with wax, stamped by a mockingbird. Petyr Baelish's sigil. Tyrion tore it open in candle glow. We must speak. Have coin. Have secrets. Meet on Purple Harbor Pier at midnight. Littlefinger here? The notion chilled. Coin and secrets indeed. But ignoring such summons risked unknown knives. He armed both guards, concealed a dagger in his boot, and made for the pier under drifting snowflakes. Baelish waited in shadow, mink-trim cloak too fine for the dock scent. His smile was moon-thin. Lord Tyrion, he purred. Bravosus mists flatter your complexion. The scar adds character, ravaged yet cunning. Put gloss on your own visage, Tyrion replied. What bait dangles tonight? Baelish's eyes glittered. Opportunity. Our mutual queen grows. Frustrated by blockade reports, yet she still commands envoys. I, for instance. You speak for Cersei? I speak for coin, Baelish corrected. She wants results. I gather possibilities. Yours, intrigues. He leaned closer. The bank may shift allegiance, true. But many vaults of lies support the crown still. Encourage me, and I secure for you the Lyseni fleet's neutrality. Stannis sails unharried. Then? And what encouragement buys that miracle? Letters from Dragonstone proving Stannis will keep master of coin, whoever that may be, in gratifying proximity to the purse. I might volunteer. He smiled as though at a private jest. I invest early markets. Tyrion stared. You wish me to guarantee you a seat in Stannis' court? Guarantee is too strong. Hint suffices. In return, wheat is withheld from Cersei, gold sneaks towards your king. A dance of purses. Tyrion's mind raced. Littlefinger's aid could shorten war, or coil double treachery. Yet spurning him risked unknown sabotage. He played for time. Write your proposal, he said. Send via neutral courier to Dragonstone. We shall consider. Baelish's grin widened. I shall pen in eloquent ink. He tipped his head and drifted into fog. Footfalls light. Tyrion watched until darkness swallowed. Back in his chamber, Tyrion penned coded accounts of the meeting, sealed them for Davos. Trust was a brittle spine. He would not let Baelish snap it unseen. 2 days later, he boarded the Bravosian galley for the return voyage. A stiff northeast wind pushed them swift along the shivering sea's rim. Yet speed could not outpace dread. Every creak of timber, he imagined scorpions or daggers. Sleep found him rarely. At Gulltown, a storm had torn piers to matchwood, delaying him 3 nights. He found Shay safe, disguised as a peddler's niece. Reunion was warmth and desperation, intermingled under threadbare blankets. Snow sliding overlooked from fractured eaves. They sailed again on a Lyseni sloop, disguised as a whaler, hugging currents where icebergs drifted. Off Crack Claw Point, a Tyrell patrol galley sighted them through winter haze. Horns blared, sails snapped. Tyrion ordered whale blubber fires lit and stoked black, choking smoke. The universal signal of plague. The Tyrell galley sheared off rather than risk contagion. Bronn would have laughed. Tyrion merely retched at the stench. When at last Dragonstone's basalt towers speared the horizon, he thought his legs might give from relief, but duty steadied them. Stannis received him in the stone brazier's hall. Melisandre nearby watched, lips parted as if tasting his returned breath. Tyrion presented the bank's raven first. Stannis read, eyes prowling lines. At the signature, his mouth twitched, a hint of triumph. Next, Tyrion surrendered Baelish's sealed scroll. Beware sweets coated in wormwood, Tyrion advised. Littlefinger styles himself master of profit, but he'd sell lungs to breathe richer air. Stannis handed the scroll to Davos unopened. We shall discuss once Swordfish Patrol's return. For now, you have one time. Menno Sol. That night another feast simmered. Hake stew and carrot bread. Tyrion sat with Davos, the air between them lighter. Yet across hall, he caught Melisandre regarding him, ruby, pulsing. He raised goblet in sardonic salute. She inclined her head as one archer marking wind before loosing arrow. Spring inched through ice crust, and the blockade fleet thinned under Iron Bank pressure. Its sailors unpaid, its admirals writing ever sharper letters to Highgarden. Saladhor exploited the lapse, raiding supply galleons. Food stores filled. Morale climbed, but victory remained distant. Word flitted of a wedding planned in King's Landing, King Joffrey to Margaery Tyrell, meant to cement alliance. If vows stood, reach coin might flow again. Tyrion argued for swift strike. Stannis hesitated. Melisandre prophesied omens yet unresolved. Davos urged patience until the last of winter broke roads. Delay ground teeth against edge. Finally, when crocus spears poked soil on Dragonstone slopes, ravens from King's Landing brought stunning news. King Joffrey Baratheon lay dead, face purple at his own wedding feast. Rumor named poison, vengeance, God's judgment. The council erupted. Stannis paced, eyes alight. The usurper dies, and the throne totters. We sail. Yet Melisandre only murmured. Shadow of a boy, for shadow of a man. The leech sang true. Tyrion felt cold inside, though hearths roared. He recalled the brazier vision. Crowd, child, gatehouse. Flames had shown a possible truth. Now reality frayed. Plans accelerated like boulders downhill. Within a fortnight, Dragonstow's harbors emptied. 50-odd galleys, a dozen cogs sallied under new banners. The crowned stag aflame. Tyrion sailed aboard Black Betha beside Davos. Shae hidden among healers' trunks, Bronn commanding a company of crossbowmen. Gales battered them rounding Driftmark, but Tyrell patrols lingered far south, distracted by capital turmoil. On the fifth dawn, the fleet slipped up the Blackwater mouth, cloaked in river mist, thick as wool. Scouts and wherries sounded the channel. Wildfire pots had been removed after the battle, but boom chains hung loose, neglected. Tyrion's heart thudded. His own chain had once closed this throat and decided a war. Now neglect opened it. Stannis ordered silence, broken only by muffled oars. Black Betha glided past the burned mudflats where skeletal hulks still jutted, grave markers of Tyrion's last stand. Memory gnawed. Screams. Green fire. But he steadied. Dock pilings appeared through haze. The King's fleet berths half empty, most royal ships refit in the Redwine Straits. Stannis banners unfurled like sudden dawn. By the time alarm bells clanged from the city, Dragonstow's men already leapt onto quays, fire arrows tracing arcs into storehouses. Tyrion's boots hit the planks. He barked orders to employ grapnels against the harbor chain winch housings. If the Lannister fleet attempted entry from seaward now, they'd find gates shut to friend and foe alike. Arrows whistled as dock guards rallied. Bronn's crossbowmen answered. Tyrion ducked behind a crate, quill long supplanted by knife, and directed casks of tar rolled into the arsenal courtyard where sparks could birth chaos. Smoke mushroomed. Gold cloaks sprinted from side alleys, but some tossed helms at Stannis' feet and begged employment. As Tyrion predicted, purse outweighed pledge. By noon, the harbor fell. Stannis' banners rippled over Chain Tower. Yet the Red Keep still loomed, walls bristling. Inside, Queen Cersei, Mace Tyrell's main host, and the Kingsguard plotted. A siege began, not by water this time, but by winding streets. Tyrion established command in the custom house, his father once used to count tariffs. Old memory colliding with new rebellion felt like swallowing broken glass. He dispatched ravens to Rivergate holdfasts, promising coin for opening postern doors. He bribed potboys to scatter rumors that the Queen blamed Tyrells for poisoning her son, that Tyrells prepared to burn Fleabottom to root out dissent. Each whisper tied bonds of alliance with cords of mistrust. Night draped the city in fire glow and fear. Shae stayed tucked in a rear room, tending wounded sailors. Each time Tyrion entered, her smile anchored him to purpose. But outside, war again churned. For 10 days, the stalemate held. Stannis commanded river and dock ward. Tyrell and Lion forces clamped hill districts. Skirmishes flared along the Street of Sisters. Wildfire traps still nested under certain warehouses, but their keys lost. Tyrion led sappers to disarm them, mind flicking to the day he set them. Irony dripped like sweat. Then, on the 11th dawn, horns pealed strange. From the northern gatehouse, a white direwolf banner flew. Stark outriders under Lord Edmure Tully's escort rode south. News of Robb Stark's death at the Twins, and the North in uproar. Edmure sought audience with the rightful king. Desperate for alliance against Lannisters he blamed. Stannis agreed, and within hours, Edmure pledged River Run's remaining horse, in exchange for justice upon the phrase and safe passage for his folk. The city's defenders felt the scales tip. Coins, letters and fear did the rest. That night, Gold Cloak Captain Ronald Hobber opened the mud gate to Davos infantry. Bells rang in panic. Tyrell pikemen retreated toward the sept, but were met by sappers dropping stones from windows bribed earlier by Tyrion's purses. The Red Keep isolated. Cersei attempted last gambit, a parley offering marriage of Tommen to Stannis' daughter. Stannis refused. Tommen illegitimate, throne not his to give. Ziga engines rolled up Aegon's high hill. Scorpions returned arcs of quarrels, but rations within dwindled. Tyrion stood on the ramp of a trebuchet, overseeing weight calculations for next stone shot when a runner approached, face blood-splattered. "Your father has been sighted," the boy gasped. "A host from the west. 12,000, maybe 15, 2 days behind. Tywin marches again." Tyrion's heart lurched. Night came early on news like that. He requested urgent counsel. In captured Small Hall, Stannis, Davos, Edmure, and the Queen's own uncle Sir Kevan Lannister, taken earlier in a sortie, gathered beneath candelabra stripped of Lannister crimson. Tyrion spoke first. "If Lord Tywin reaches this city together with the Queen's men still inside, we face pincer collapse." Davos nodded. "Hold keep, break field host outside. 2 fronts bleed us thin." Stannis paced. "Then we meet him before he crosses the Blackwater." Tyrion exhaled. "Risky. Leave a garrison to maintain siege, while main force marches southwest. But supply lines exposed." Edmure rubbed beard. "River Run horse can harry Tywin's flanks, cut baggage." Stannis turned to Tyrion. "Numbers." Tyrion unfurled tables. "We field 17,000, counting Riverland riders. Tywin at 15, but heavy horse veterans. If we strike along the Rosewad before he can link with Mace Tyrell, broken by our blockade, they cannot outflank." Decision crystallized. At dawn, banners rose. Ziga left to 4,000 foot. Stannis marched with the rest across the same ground Tyrion once defended. Irony again, sharper this time. Shay watched him tighten straps upon a destrier borrowed from Davos, fear shining unshed. "I will ride behind lines," he promised. Counting arrows, not catching them. She pressed a charm of carved elk bone into his palm. "For luck," she whispered. Bronn punched his shoulder in passing. "Stay alive, dwarf. I'm still owed ale." On the Roserwad, churned mud stank of earlier harvest carts turned graves. Scouts reported Tywin's vanguard camped at a burned orchard near Bywater. Davos advanced light cavalry in moonless dark, torches masked. At first pink blush of dawn, horns screamed. Stannis' line surged, Riverland horse slamming into disorganized Lannister outriders. Tyrion remained with the field ledger wagons on a low ridge. Spyglass pressed to brow. Chaos writhed below. Banners shredding. Dust clouds glint of steel. He saw the gold lion standard dip, then rise, then crumple as a stag-antlered helmed knight hacked bearer down. Yet rumor proved right about Lannister discipline. Tywin rallied quick, red cloaks forming shield wall. Their countercharge ripped a gap. Stannis himself thundered there. Sword red. For one heartbeat, Tyrion feared collision would crush the king. Until Davos infantry slammed into Tywin's flank in perfect timing. Numbers dance. Tyrion's allocations of horse feed and forced marches shaved hours that now spelled difference. Midway through second watch, Lannister trumpets keened retreat. Tywin's main body wheeled west, screened by heavy horse. Stannis ordered pursuit halted. His army, blooded but victorious, lacked fresh mounts to chase. On that ridge, Tyrion slumped, exhaustion and relief tangling. Father beaten but alive. The war extended, but Crownlands, now Stannis. Numbers indeed. Their army wheeled back to King's Landing, prisoners in tow, carts of captured supply. Outside the Red Keep, siege towers smoldered where defenders had tried last sally. Kevan Lannister parlayed surrender once news of Tywin's defeat reached gates. Cersei took refuge in the Maker's holdfast sept. Melisandre's fire smoked through night, and come dawn she emerged. Pale, guiding Queen Regent barefoot in chains of barleycorn gold. No blood spilled further. Tommen, wide-eyed, yielded crown to his uncle in exchange for promise of education and safety in Storm's End. Stannis ascended throne in the half-ruined throne room, where shattered rubies of Joffrey's wedding still gleamed between flagstones, each step echoing new order. In the tumult that followed, council appointments, hostage treaties, Tyrell withdrawal, Tyrion found himself named Lord Treasurer of the realm. Varys survived in shadows, Baelish vanished on a Pentoshi cog the night of Tywin's defeat, and the Iron Bank envoy arrived. Terms signed, funds released. On the evening, crowns were reforged. Tyrion stood on the terrace overlooking Blackwater. Fires no longer colored water green, yet memory clung. Shay slipped her hand into his. For once he let silence hold them. "Do we rest now?" she asked. He considered distant campfires of free companies still outside walls, realm scars yet raw. Rest? Not yet. Repairs first, then bread. You and your numbers. They saved us. He smiled faint. But a new account begins tomorrow. She leaned against his shoulder, gazing at river. "Write it kinder this time." He squeezed her hand. "I will try. Justice owes interest after all." Mensasawan. Below, water lapped stone, tireless, calculating, wearing down even hardest castles grain by grain, until something new emerged from silt. Tyrion watched moonlight tremble on that surface, and for the first time since green fire bathed the bay, believed rebuilding possible, currency of hope secured, ledger balanced by lives spared. The story, long and laden with ink and blood, was far from spent. But for this quiet breath, its pages lay open, waiting for the next careful line. Okay. The first snow of the new rain melted into gutters along the street of flour, soaking straw mats and the mud-water boots of every baker lined for grain allotments. Tyrion stood beneath the sagging red-tiled eave of a shutter-mended counting house, the collar of a sable cloak resisting drizzle and fits. Beside him, Maester Pylos held a slate and chalk, scribbling weight tallies while each guildsman's cart eased forward, sacks split for inspection, weevils pit-free, and revenues assessed to within the quarter-penny. The work was drudgery, but drudgery laid stones no feast could. He thought of the Iron Bank's letter, interest deferred, but never forgiven, and let the rasp of chalk become a metronome for patience. One cart spilled more husk than oat. He fined the miller 2 stags on the spot, ignored the muttered oath, and moved on. When twilight slanted move across the rooftops, he dismissed the column and warmed hands over a brazier that hissed pitchy smoke into fog. Coins rang inside his ledger chest, heavy enough to promise tomorrow's bread, but nowhere close to paying for siege repairs, new ships, or the wages of 4,000 volatile gold cloaks. If victory held the shape of a cup, King's Landing drank it dry long ago. The Red Keep, newly rebannered with crowned stag and fiery heart, loomed slate and crimson above the city. Tyrion climbed the hill by torchlight, Bronn pacing a half-step behind, crossbow slung easy across his back as those streets could sprout assassins like mushrooms. Shops had reopened since the fighting, yet shutters still bore arrow gouges, and talk of lion men riding in midnight roved every tavern. In the outer yard he found Davos Seaworth and Lord Edmure, studying lumber piled beside a half-built granary. Jowls wind-reddened, Davos lifted hand in greeting. "The beams will hold," he said, tapping heartwood. "If we can keep carpenters sober long enough." Tyrion snorted. Pay them in watered wine. They'll drink less ale on their own coin. Edmure offered a tired smile. Half the city's casks burst in the riot. We barter on promises these days. Promises minted like copper, Tyrion replied, thumbing the laces of his gloves. Which reminds me, I'll need Riverrun's river toll ledgers by week's end. Edmure grimaced. Rob used to call me ledger shy. Best cure, I suppose, is handing my figures to a dwarf who counts breath in shillings. Your breath is worth 2 pence at market, Tyrion said, straight-faced. But collectible. He left them chuckling and stepped to meet the barbican archway, Bronn holding back until sentries saluted. The keep smelled of damp limestone and new rushes. Spartan, like Dragonstone dragged inland. Stannis tolerated tapestries only when they blocked drafts. Up the winding tower stair, past a pair of Stormlander guards, the solar doors stood ajar. Tyrion entered to find Queen Shireen seated on a carved bench by the hearth, long face bent over a vellum codex of Braavosi fables. Her grayscale scars gleamed silver where firelight grazed them. Across the room, Stannis paced a wolf-shaped fur rug, chain of royal office clanking with each turn. He broke stride as Tyrion bowed. 3 days late, he barked. 2, Tyrion corrected, unlatching the ledger chest. I promised figures at first snowfall, and flakes only kissed rooftops this dawn. Stannis accepted the sheaf Pylos had copied. Scowl deepening, he stabbed a column with calloused finger. Dock levies down 10 barrels of silver. Merchants fear new tariff codes. Clarity breeds tribute. Confusion breeds hidden holds. The codes await your seal. Shireen peered over her codex. Father, may I review them? Master Arnau says I read ledgers quicker than Septus read prayer. Stannis' mouth twitched toward pride before discipline smothered it. Tomorrow? He pushed the papers aside. The matter of Casterly Rock remains. Tywin regroups in the west. Without that holdfast his pride festers. With it, he pays sellswords. Nemsau. Tyrion pulled off his damp gloves, laying them on a stool. Cracks run deeper than pride. Rock miners report copper, not gold, and the price of copper tumbles when merchants smell fear. Cut his markets and he buys sellswords on hollow promise. Easy words, Stannis said. Harder deeds. You speak of harpies and Astapor selling brass for gold. I speak of gulls. Tyrion crossed to the shelf, selecting a folded map. The Lannister coast stands exposed. Ironborn raids taught them caution. But if we underwrite a fleet from House Harlaw— Harlaws are reavers, Stannis snapped. Reavers who hate the lion more than the stag. Promise them salvage rights on rock coastal convoys. Their longships dart where our cogs dare not. Davos appeared in the doorway, salt still crusting his sleeves. They'd sail for promise of plunder. Whether they stop at plunder is another tale. Stannis waved him in. I would not trade 1 lion for 5 krakens. Nor would I, Tyrion said mildly. But krakens chew gold shipments. Gold shipments by mercenaries. So long as krakens feed, sellswords starve. Silence stretched, broken only by the hiss of pine logs. Shireen hugged her book, eyes bright. Lady Melisandre says sometimes you must feed wolves to save sheep. Stannis turned on her, startled. Did she? Metaphor, I expect. Tyrion offered with a half bow to Shireen. Yet apt. Stannis exhaled through the nose of a man tasting sour ale. Write to Lord Harlaw. Promise salvage, no settlements. Any captives come to me for judgment. Tyrion inclined his head. By morning, Raven. Davos cleared his throat. And the kingdom's spring planting. Farmers need seed, plow oxen, tools. War emptied barns. Tax remission. Remission? Stannis barked. The realm bleeds coin. Tyrion raised a palm. So subsidize from a source outside coin. Seize Cersei's personal jewels. Melt them into seed grants redeemable at any Riverlands granary. Jewels glitter on highborn necks or glitter in furrows. Better the latter. Stannis stared, iron and doubt grappling behind his eyes. At last he gave a curt nod. See it done. Bronn, waiting behind the door, drawled a yawn loud enough to echo. Tyrion shot him a glare. Bronn responded with a grin and a tap of crossbow string. Dismissed. Tyrion bowed from the waist, collected his gloves and left. In the corridor he heard Shireen behind him ask her father why goldfields die and how one saves them, and Stannis answer in quiet tones the hall did not carry. A flicker of pity warmed Tyrion for that stern king who loved his daughter yet seldom dared show it. Later, in his treasury chamber, overlooking the God's Eye courtyard, Tyrion spread fresh parchment beside Shae, who copied entries by candle glow. Soft lamplight kissed her cheekbones. He watched the lazy sway of a coil of hair across her shoulder until she noticed. "Stop staring or ink blots," she murmured. "I'd blot entire histories for that view." She dipped quill, not looking up. "Save flattery. Tonight you promised to visit the new shelter. Orphans wait." He cursed gently. Exhaustion weighed heavier than gauntlets, but a vow still ached when broken. He capped the wax jar. One more column. 10 breaths. Her voice softened. "You need rest, Lion." He counted exactly 10 while finishing the margin figures, rolled parchment, kissed her brow. "Lead on." "Steward of orphans." She gripped his elbow. They descended through servants' halls, pungent with broth simmer and onion. At the base of Maidenvault Slope, a stable once used by King Robert's grooms had been cleared of dung. Thatch roof patched. Straw pallets laid row on row. A charcoal brazier exhaled meager heat. Small faces blinked up. Some scarred, many thin. Shae knelt among them, distributing yesterday's bannock loaves sliced thin and sweetened with treacle. Tyrion crouched, greeting each child by name, though he forgot one and had to beg forgiveness, which made them giggle. A boy about 7 thrust up a splintered wooden sword. "Sir Imp, will you show parry?" Tyrion accepted, parried the next swing with exaggerated grunt. Laughter pealed. Another memory. Bronn teaching him to jab low. Surfaced bittersweet. After 10 heartbeats he relinquished the toy sword and sat cross-legged on straw, reciting a Braavosi fable of a coin that rolled so far it became king of gutters. They listened with round eyes. When Shae finally tugged his sleeve, he rose with effort, joints popping, and left them murmuring about coins and crowns. Outside, chill wind scraped. Shae hugged his arm. "You belong there more than in tower counting rooms." He shook his head. "Coins feed them better than stories. One day both, maybe." He cupped her hand to his cheek. "Come. The tower calls." Days slid into weeks. Ravens returned with scrawled sigils of Harlaw, Good Brother, and Botley, all agreeing to limited raids along the Golden Coast in exchange for salvage rights and pardon for past crimes against Dragonstone's banner. Tyrion forwarded the letters to Stannis, wary but resolute. Overnight, gold convoys dwindled. Reports reached them of Lannisport harboring 3 charred hulls, and of a Harlaw captain hoisting a lion flag upside down from his mast. Inside the capital, crops sprouted in allotments by the river gate, seeded from melted rubies once ornamenting Cersei's tiara. Peasants called them Queen's Tears. Half mocking, half in wonder at crimson stones turned seed warrants. Breadlines shortened. For a breath, hope took timid root. Yet the realm's scars ran deep. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell swore vengeance against Stannis the usurper, raising fresh levies on peasants already overtaxed. On the Trident, Lord Walder Frey brandished twin alliances, half promising fealty to River Run, half to Casterly Rock, depending who read the letter. In Dorne, Prince Doran Martell remained a sphinx, his quills silent while spyglass eyes measured all. Then winter's fickle heart gave way. Snows thawed into churning rivers, roads softened, and the game quickened pace. One mid-morning, while Tyrion consulted with Varys, returned from spider silence to spin webs anew, a runner in crimson and gold livery stumbled into the treasury. Breath ragged, the man collapsed, unrolling a blood-spattered parchment bearing the wax lion of Casterly Rock. Tyrion read the first lines, felt blood retreat from his cheeks, and dismissed everyone but Bronn. Tywin dead, the letter said. Slain at night in his war pavilion near Ashmark. Throat opened ear to ear, no witnesses but a torn tent flap. Kevin rallied Western banners, but shock rippled. Rumors named a sellsword, a riverman, a scorned mistress. Bronn spat. Reckon the old lion finally turned his back on someone who brought a sharper knife. Tyrion reeled, gripping a ledger chest to steady. He should have felt triumph. Instead, a sour void yawned. A lifetime spent beneath the man's shadow, and now that shadow gone, leaving him blinking in naked daylight. He remembered childhood lessons of sons delivered in a voice hard as freeze. He remembered the day his father insisted that monsters named dwarf rode a tilt between pity and disgust. He remembered, too, the single time Tywin laughed, when Jaime spilled arbor red onto his doublet. A hollow echo now. The kingdom would shake. Tywin's authority bound the West. Without him, lesser lions would claw each other. Yet chaos birthed knives no coin could bribe. He pushed away the void and set quill to parchment. Letters to Stannis, Davos, and Edmure, summarizing the event, advising caution, urging swift envoy to House Lannister's fractured kin. Then he penned a private note to Casterly Rock addressed to Jaime, still hostage in the Red Keep's gentler tower, under guard yet granted audience with septons and books. Jaime, whose release Tyrion kept postponing, waiting for leverage firm enough. Leverage perhaps arrived. He crossed courtyard stone to Jaime's chamber himself, note unread. Guards straightened. He dismissed them with nod. Inside, his brother sat by a high-arched window, winter sun gilding the stubble on his jaw. A white sling cradled his stump, where hand once curled the lion's sword. He looked older, no, wearier, than the day the war began. Tyrion. Jaime rose, chain of his plain tunic glinting. News travels faster than ravens, sometimes slower. Tyrion handed over the parchment with wax unbroken. Jaime frowned, unsealed, and read. Lines of pain carved his features. Father, he exhaled. Silence stretched. Caged ravens croaked somewhere down tower. Jaime sank onto the bench. How? Throat cut. Reports vary. Tyrion stared at his brother's eyes, gold, dulled. I'm sorry. Jaime laughed once, a brittle sound. Are you? Then remorse flooded his gaze. Forgive me. I don't know what I feel. Nor I, Tyrion admitted. He climbed onto a stool. But we must decide quickly. Kevin will rally Western lords. Without father, Cersei's claim totters. Tommen is hostage. Myrcella still in Sunspear. If we act, we shape outcome. If not, others bleed for it. Jaime pinched bridge of his nose. Speak your proposal. Tyrion inhaled. Send a joint letter. You, me, Kevin. Pledge your support for peace under King Stannis, in exchange for Western autonomy and amnesty. The realm wins stability. The West keeps its lands and pride, funds war recovery through grain tariffs instead of blood. Jaime studied him. And Cersei? She'll fight, Tyrion said, pain flaring. But the realm cannot endure fresh campaigns. Better she be persuaded, gently if possible, that her strength now lies in guiding Tommen to a quiet lordship, nothing more. A flicker of warmth passed Jaime's features. Memory of younger sister, perhaps. She will never accept less than crown. Then let her have a gilded keep in the West, far from court. Better tyrants be localized. Jaime looked beyond him, to a sky bruised violet by storm approach. I will sign, he said quietly. But I must speak with her first. Tyrion nodded. You shall. Soon. For now, I'll draft terms. Benandi. That night wind howled through arrow slits, slamming shutters until servants cursed. Tyrion could not sleep. He paced the treasury chamber, counting heartbeats. The thought of Cersei uncaged gnawed. Varys slipped in airy as ghosts, bringing parchment of fresh whispers. Tyrell riders massing near Bitterbridge again. Ironborn thralls mounting raids south as far as Old Oak. Martell spies buying obsidian blades. What game now? Tyrion murmured. The only game, my lord. The game of breath. Varys feathered a fan. A realm inhaling war and sighing peace, never quite exhaling either. What have you heard of father's killer? Tyrion asked. The tent was slit like a purse, Varys replied. silent as smoke. Some say a Braavosi sellsword, others a northern girl in servant garb. The old lion made many enemies, few patient. Tyrion's mind conjured Arya Stark, rumored dead, rumored everywhere. He shivered. Who benefits most? Any who feared Tywin's next march. The eunuch's smile held sorrow like wine diluted. House Florent begs audience tomorrow, he added. They carry chests, perhaps coin for forgiveness. Tyrion dismissed him with weary wave. Dawn bled red. Council convened early, faces lined with knights devoid of rest. Tyrion presented his plan for Western neutrality. Voices rose. Lord Celtigar scorned any pact with lions. Davos worried of Ironborn indiscipline. Melisandre spoke little, watching Tyrion as though measuring his shadow for lengthening gloom. Stannis tapped mapwood. If Jaime Lannister yields, the West yields. Their gold wells dry. A truce there frees men for Dorne or the Neck. And no, Tyrion added, and gives us breathing room to harvest next winter. Arguments rolled until midday, when council approved conditional accords. Bow lords of the West keep titles. Pay arrears, forswear vengeance. Tyrion pressed wax seals himself, dispatching ravens. 2 days later, Jaime rode out the river gate, under escort, to treat with his uncle. Tyrion watched from parapet, heart heavy. Beneath battered helm, Jaime saluted once, then vanished into morning haze. In those 2 days, other fires kindled. A riot in Flea Bottom erupted after a street charlatan preached that R'hllor demanded the purging of false children. 7 died before gold cloaks contained it. Tyrion ordered grain deliveries doubled, fearing hunger brewed anger. He also summoned Melisandre. The Red Woman entered the Tower of the Hand at dusk, ruby throbbing. Tyrion met her at a table, stacked with tax scrolls and knives for sealing wax. Your shadow of faith casts long. He opened. Longer than I approve. Her smile curved like a scimitar. I do not command fire of crowds. Our lore speaks in hearts. So does fear. I want no repeat of last night's sermon. Memsan know what? Andy. She regarded him, eyes ember bright. Fear is a sword. Sometimes one must brandish it to cut rot. Tyrion shook his head. Swords swung without true aim strike innocence. Stannis means to rule through justice, not terror. Justice burns away sin. Justice also feeds orphans, he snapped. I'll not trade bread for cinders. Silence coiled. Then she inclined her head. We seek same flame, lion. Only differ in tinder. She turned to depart, stopping at door. Yet no. Shadows gather faster than coin fills coffers. When dark comes, candles alone fail. And when she left, Tyrion felt cold despite the fire. He poured wine but could not drink. Spring's first buds opened on King's Landings, thorn bushes, the morning Jaime's raven arrived. Kevin Lannister accepted terms. Lords Craighall, Brax, and Sarsfield concurred. Rivermen exhaled. Trade envoys cheered. Stannis permitted a rare smile. Yet the letter carried addendum. Cersei rejected peace, barricaded herself in Casterly Rock's sea tower with a cadre of loyal guards, swearing to crown Tammen at Lannisport. War between siblings loomed. Tyrion petitioned Stannis for leave to accompany envoy to negotiate. Stannis denied. Let lions settle dens alone, he ruled. Instead, he dispatched Davos and 3 Sell-Sail captains with orders to interdict any crown shipments from Lannisport to Casterly Rock and escort Tommen eastward if possible. Within fortnight, scrolls declared Tommen safely aboard a Stormlander galley, bound for Storm's End to foster under Shireen's tutelage. Cersei remained defiant, yet isolated. The realm pivoted from roar to whimper. Evenings again belonged to rebuilding. Tyrion walked harbor quays, surveying the skeleton of a new mast tower, counting timber lengths. Shae walked beside him, shawl tangled by river breeze. You pace like a cat starved of corners, she teased. Corners keep walls held, he grumbled. But he stopped, drew her beneath the shadow of a crane boom, kissed her fingers. When ledger closes balanced, We leave this stink for a week. Driftmark perhaps. Sand, sea, no parchment. I'll hold you to it, she whispered. A moon turned. Fleets returned bearing Tarthstone for breakwater repairs. Grain stores filled vaults. The Iron Bank sent emissaries praising punctual payments. Tyrion permitted himself a rare afternoon with Podrick Payne, now squire to Sir Davos, teaching him letters in the parapet sunshine. Pod's earnest focus lifted a laugh free of guilt. Yet across the realm storm clouds built. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell wed his second son to a red wine niece and rallied banners anew. In the north, Bolton's skirmishes against Karstarks flared. In the Stepstones, Lyseni corsairs attacked Stormland traders. On the Dorne marches, skirmishers clashed. Tyrion's inkwell never stayed capped for long. Then, on a damp summer night, an obsidian-bladed dagger found its mark. He was climbing the narrow servants' stair to his chambers, Shay a dozen steps ahead, humming, when dark erupted. A hooded form lunged, blade glinting midnight. Instinct shoved Shay aside. Steel kissed Tyrion's ribs, catching leather, scoring skin. Bronn answered first. 2 crossbow bolts thudded. The assassin collapsed, blood speckling walls. Shay screamed. Tyrion slid down 3 steps, breath crushed, hands wet crimson. Bronn hauled him to feet while guards thundered up. Pain flared sharp, but shallow. Glancing strike. Lucky, Bronn muttered. Next time we're mailed to bed. Inside Solar, Maester Pylos stitched the wound. They unmasked the killer. A boy no more than 15, freckles under soot streaks, sigil of a sun and spear tattooed crude on inner wrist. Dorne? Tyrion hissed through pain. Bronn shrugged. Hired blades come branded these days. Stannis stormed in, face carved from grief and rage. Davos close behind. Shay sat rigid. Silent tears. Stannis swept the corpse with disgust. Assassins like weeds. You burn one, 2 sprout. I'd hang every Dornish merchant. No, Tyrion croaked. Not merchants. This is politics. Someone fears peace more than war. Ben Shoal. Melisandre slipped from shadow, eyes aglow. Shadow of sun behind spear. The warrior maid lifts blade for vengeance long denied. Oblique riddles later. Tyrion groaned. He summoned strength. For now. Secrecy. Let city think attacker unknown. If Dorne denies blame, they lose face. If they proclaim, they reveal purpose. Stannis agreed. The corpse vanished into Fortress Furnace. Guards doubled at every stairwell. Shay refused to leave Tyrion's bedside, and for 2 nights he drifted in poppy haze, while she read to him from Braavosi fables. On the 3rd dawn, Varys arrived with a small parchment smelling of lemon and warm sand. Prince Doran regrets rumor of blade, it read. Offers healer, denies sanction. He closed by requesting an envoy to discuss matters of mutual grievance. Tyrion reread thrice. Hey Denise while inviting. Indeed, Varys said, folding plump fingers. Perhaps the prince fears fires creeping north. Groves burn faster than palaces. Tyrion sat upright, winced. Stannis will refuse. He sees Dornish spears as viperfang. Yet, you may persuade him. That noon, bandaged under doublet, Tyrion hobbled to council. Shay escorting. He argued, Dorne's ports hold oranges and soldiers. Better to sip their wine than taste their steel. Davos supported. Melisandre cautioned, the serpent coils only to strike. Stannis listened, face granite, then finally granted leave for a small embassy. Tyrion, Davos, and 2 guards. Shay protested but relented when he promised letters daily and Bronn at his side. They sailed on a swift galley south past Cape Wrath, hugging calm seas as gulls wheeled overhead. Tyrion spent hours on deck, breathing salt, rereading Doran's letter. Davos taught him knots, laughter easing tension. By sundown of the 3rd day, Spear Tower's white crenellations pierced horizon. At Sunspear, they found Doran Martell cloaked in thick orange velvet, gout-swollen feet propped on cushions. He received them in a sunlit courtyard heavy with lemon blossom. His voice ached with gentleness. I mourn the dagger's folly, he said. Hot blood in cool night often betrays houses. Tyrion bowed. Hot or hired. Truth, like sand, slips yet accumulates. Doran inclined head. Then let us pile truth carefully. Over dates and spiced wine he spoke of Myrcella, still healing from an earlier plot that scarred her cheek, still beloved by Dornish crowds. Doran proposed marriage of Myrcella to his heir, Trystane, ratified by King Stannis in exchange for Dornish neutrality. He offered spears for the north should Bolton's rise. Tyrion considered. Myrcella's hand must be freely given. She loves him, Doran whispered. 2 days of negotiation followed. Tyrion toured water gardens, marveled at children splashing fountains, found hope there. Davos brokered shipping rights for Dornish oranges to land tax-free in King's Landing. In secret chamber, Doran passed him a sealed scroll. Histories of Lannister dealings with Freys, proof implicating Lord Walder in Red Wedding. He asked they be used at discretion. Tyrion accepted. On departure morning, Arianne Martell, viper-eyed and fierce, slipped Tyrion a blade of green glass. For your ribs, lion, she said. And for the dagger you took. He thanked her, wondering if she orchestrated the attempt. Her smile offered no confession. Back in Capital Moon later, Embassy's triumph buoyed spirits. Myrcella, bright-eyed, greeted Tyrion with hug, then demanded news of Trystana's latest song. He delivered Dornish letters scented with jasmine. She blushed. Stannis read terms in silence, then signed, setting wax. Alliance cemented. But as one front quieted, another roared. The Reach, enraged by Dornish accord and Western truce, advanced north with 16,000 under Garland Tyrell. Scouts reported siege towers moving toward Golden Grove, whose lord now bent knee to Stannis. War threatened anew. Tyrion urged negotiation. Offer them grain surplus from Dorne, offset by trade routes. Stannis demanded unconditional submission. Davos mediated to little avail. Bronn returned from scouting, sporting fresh scar, reporting Tyrells building trebuchets with ironwood beams. They mean to make example. Council-hot debates boiled until midnight. Tyrion found himself playing hinge between iron will and ragged hope. At last, plan emerged. Intercept Tyrell supply lines with Dornish riders under Sir Archibald Euronwood. At same time, send ravens to Old Town Citadel, revealing Cersei's secret letters urging Tyrell betrayal. Proof gleaned from Varys. The revelation might fracture Reach unity. Ravens flew. 2 weeks later, Old Town declared neutrality pending inquiry. Half the Reach host turned back, leaving Garland short of forage. Ziga of Golden Grove faltered, ended with negotiated passage home. War's edge dulled yet again. Autumn painted leaves copper and gold. Tyrion walked garden paths with Shireen, discussing ledgers and stories. She quoted the coin fable back to him, earning proud smile. Shay oversaw orphan shelter expansion to the ruins of Dragon Pit, turning broken dome into roofed dormitory. The Red Keep grew rings of scaffolding, masons repaired walls, carved new reliefs showing crowned stag defending a kneeling commoner. Tyrion visited each carving, ensuring no dwarf caricatures lurked. One evening, while mapping trade tariffs, Podrick rushed in waving a sealed parchment bearing the seal of a mockingbird. Littlefinger's script purred. Opportunities ripe. Bravos backs Queen Claimant with ships. Suggest meeting in Gulltown, Moon's Turn, to ensure tides flow mutually. Tyrion showed the letter to Varys Stannis devastated. They debated. Trap, or chance to draw Pettier into light. Varys proposed sending a double, but Stannis insisted truth faced men. If he courts treason, I would hear him. Tyrion volunteered. Plan. Meet Littlefinger under guise of negotiation with hidden guards. Gultan's autumn wind carried scent of kelp and fish guts. In a lantern-lit counting house, Tyrion sat opposite Littlefinger, who wore a gray velvet doublet dusted with road dust, and the grin of a cat sharpening claws. Conversation slithered. Shipping monopolies, Bravosi fleet leases, coin. Tyrion parried, offering half-truths, probing for names. Littlefinger revealed Tyrell plots to crown Margaery queen in her own right, suggestive only. He dangled promises of 200 ships if given master of coin post again. Then Tyrion laid trap. Forged ledgers showing Stannis near insolvency, left carelessly for Littlefinger to discover. In truth false, they named secret debt to lies. Littlefinger's eyes glittered at bait. He excused himself, letter pocket bulging. Outside, Davos men shadowed him to a harbor inn, where he passed forged ledgers to a Braavosi captain. They arrested both quietly at dawn. Under chamber torchlight, Littlefinger realized betrayal, yet tried smile. Never play cards with a man who invented the deck, Tyrion told him. Stannis ordered trial. Evidence arrayed. Correspondence with Tyrell treasurer. Attempt to undermine royal credit. Sealed. Sentence: confiscation of property, banishment to the wall. Tyrion watched the mockingbird stripped of plumes, a satisfaction mixed with warning. Yet another snake removed, others wait. Winter edges returned. Grain stores brimming, coins slowly returning. Realm, for first time under Stannis, felt steady. Yet in quiet of tower, Tyrion lay awake, listening to wind sigh through arrow slits, wondering when next wave would rise. Peace was coin he spent daily, polished but fragile. Shay curled against him, murmured, "Dream less of numbers." He kissed her hair. "When they stop chasing me. If they catch, what then? Then I'll teach them to waltz." His fingers traced the rib scar where dagger grazed. Wind faded. Sleep claimed them both. Years later, maesters would write that the War of Five Kings ended not with sword point, but with ink strokes and bread loaves. They would debate whose quill proved sharpest, Tyrion the Halfman's figures, Davos the Onion Knight's honesty, or Stannis the Stern's relentless justice. They would argue whether Cersei's exile to sunset keep saved or doomed her soul, and whether Myrcella's marriage to Trystane birthed era of Dornish plenty or sowed seeds of yet another conflict. They would note the dwarf Lord Treasurer, who rode no battles yet, conquered hunger, deficit, and riot with equal cunning. But within the quiet chambers of memory, Tyrion measured legacy not by scroll, but by laughter drifting from the orphan dormitory, where Shay read bedtime tales, by the mason's bell clanging each time another shattered wall restored, by Shireen's excitement at her first balanced budget, by the absence of wildfire shadows across the river. One dusk he stood upon the tower of the hand balcony, a fresh ledger bound in calfskin beside him. Blackwater Bay glimmered bronze, untroubled. Bronn joined, mail jingling. "You did it," the sellsword said. City stands. King sits. Purse clinks. For now, too sober a view. Bronn leaned on parapet. "You could have died 10 times. Instead you got power, gold, girl. Not bad." Tyrion grinned sideways. "I recall owing you ale. Several casks. We'll drink them tonight. Then tomorrow you audit the harbor guards." Bronn groaned. Tyrion laughed. Below, merchants' lanterns spangled dusk. Ships bobbed with cargo, honest and otherwise. Bells tolled from the sept, no longer mournful. Across rooftops, banners snapped. The crowned stag, the fiery heart, a new standard of a quill crossing scales, Tyrion's own sigil granted by grateful king. He raised a notional cup to the wind. To father, whose shadow forged his fire. To brothers, lion and stag, who taught sword and stubbornness. To Shay, who kept his heart beating when gold demanded every pulse. To numbers, silent, tireless, his true army. And to the game not of thrones but of lives, won this season, to be defended the next. He turned from sunset to candlelit desk, quill poised over blank first page. Breath in. Ink touched parchment. Once upon a ledger he wrote, "There was a kingdom that starved for want of men who counted." And then he began again. Oh, K. The summer that followed the Reach's withdrawal, flowered yellow and fragrant. A season so gentle it felt half apologetic for the savageries of the last years. Wheat heads stood tall in the crownlands, orchard limbs bent beneath peaches fat as fists, and the first vintage pressed after the siege tasted of dusk-lit honey kissed by salt. For a handful of sweet moons, King's Landing remembered how to smile without suspicion. Sailcloth bright, with foreign dyes corkscrewed above the harbor. Hawkers praised their figs or Myrish lace instead of muttering doom, and children played chase across the cobbles, where blood had lately stuck like mortar. Tyrion walked those streets daily, escorted, true, but with helm off and cloak unadorned, collecting gossip the way a beekeeper gathers honeycomb. Slow, careful, unafraid of the sting. In one low-roofed alehouse near Cobbler Square, he learned the price of a hook's length of eel had fallen by half since the tariffs eased. In another, a scar-jawed potter told him how Dornish oranges fetched twice their weight in coppers the moment they arrived, ripe as sunset. At a riverside tannery he listened to journeymen complain that Tyrell soldiers now crossed the Trident, looking for hire, driving wages down. Each morsel he carried back to the Tower of the Hand and fed to ledgers waiting like empty bellies. Numbers swelled, dipped, found parity. The realm, like a convalescent rising from sickbed, began to put on healthy flesh. But convalescents are fragile, and war never stays cured for long. Word of the first Reaver attack reached the capital on a dawn washed pearl gray by sea fog. The raven, wings ragged, breast feathers blackened by tar smoke, carried a splinter of driftwood bound to its leg, and a message inked in a jagged, unfamiliar runic hand. Deep light broken. We come for gold unpaid. Shield your children. The seal was a crude kraken, smeared in lampblack. Tyrion studied the parchment in the council chamber while cobweb light seeped through arrow slits and the air smelled of quenched braziers and peppered lamp oil. Around the painted table, the king's small council shuffled half-ready, Stannis sharp in unadorned boiled leather, eyes harder than tourney lances, Davos with salt still clinging to his beard, Maester Pylos yawning behind his sleeve, Melisandre a flame-lit shadow at the chamber's edge. Deep den, Tyrion translated, tapping the parchment. They mean deep den in the west. If they've struck a mountain hold this far inland, they have sailed the Mander, perhaps even the Sunset Sea. Stannis's jaw worked. Ironborn, or pretenders wearing kraken cloaks. Tyrion gave a thin smile. But the warning is clear. Someone intends to raid Lannister gold, or what remains of it. Davos motioned to the wooden shard. That's deck planking from a narrow galley. I know the grain. They stripped a prow for threat's sake. Only a bold captain does that. A bold or desperate. Tyrion set the shard aside. Either way, the Western lords may panic. They swore peace, but peace is brittle if the sea vomits reavers on their coasts. The king's gaze fixed on the parchment as if he meant to burn through it. Send warning to Kevan Lannister. He holds my peace. If he fails to guard it, he forfeits its shield. And dispatch Sir Godry and the garrison of Case. Let him protect the coast. Then? Tyrion inclined his head. It will be done. But fear coiled quietly. He knew how quickly raiders' sparks could ignite war tinder. He had lit such matches himself once. 2 weeks later, sparks erupted indeed. A line of battered refugees limped through the Lion Gate, carrying tales of night-black sails winged with rust-red krakens, of bales of reach wheat and barrels of arbor wine hauled screaming from manors before the roofs were torched. They spoke of mailed men who bragged their lord, now wore a crown of twisted iron, above a beard salt white as breakers. Euron, many whispered, crossing themselves to every god in reach. Euron Crow's eye come again with blue lips and black magic. Tyrion listened from beneath a hood in the custom house, while scribes tallied the refugees' names. Across the yard a girl no more than 12 pressed a charred doll to her ribs. Its porcelain face had melted, leaving a grin that looked carved by demons. She saw him watching, offered the doll up as though he might mend it. Tyrion found himself speech-struck. He dug 2 silver stars from his purse instead, closed them around her palm, and stepped away. That evening the council reconvened. Reports confirmed the worst. Euron Greyjoy, long thought drowned or mad, had returned to the Iron Islands, seized the Seastone chair in a holy orgy of blood, and sailed with near the whole of Pike behind him. His first raiding wave fell on Westermen and reached coasts simultaneously. a forked tongue tasting for weakness. Salt wives were taken, smoke towers left behind. Tyrion spread a fresh chart on the painted table, marking pinpricks of carnage. These are stings, but stings infect. If coastal lords rally behind Kevin, maybe they hold. If they crumble, the Kraken squeezes the coast and coin stops flowing. He looked up. We starve. Stannis rubbed fingers along his scarred jaw. Lord Harlaw swore to raid only Casterly convoys, not common folk. Euron cares little for bargains. The Kraken devours friend and foe alike. He pointed to the map's southern sweep. We must cut the tentacle at its root. Rivermen and Stormlanders march on Seaguard at once. Davos, you will lead the fleet to the Shield Islands. Blockade the Mandermouth. Now. Melisandre's voice drifted like smoke. Night rides the waves with crow's wings blue as moonlight. Steel alone may fail. Steel is what I have. Stannis slammed fist on oak. My lord hand? Find me coin for pitch, lime, and crossbow strings. Tyrion met the king's eyes. I will find it. The hunt for coin drove him into the vaults beneath the Iron Bank's local counting house, where Braavosi cashiers weighed each dragon against scales, fine enough to judge the soul of a man if souls were minted in gold. Tyrion carried not gold but words, a proposal that the bank underwrite a war loan secured against future, reach harvests at a favorable rate once Euron's incursions ceased. Magister Falar, Hay of the unreadable mask-thin face, listened, tapped quill upon ledger, and finally agreed, provided the bank's agents accompany the fleet to monitor expenditures. Spies, you mean? Tyrion muttered, as he stepped back into sunlight, followed by Bronn. But a spy who writes checks, he thought, is a tolerable nuisance. He dispatched raven after raven, to Old Town's cobblers for tough-soled marching boots, to Mir's arrowmakers for 500,000 goose-fletched shafts, to beekeepers in the Rainwood who brew pitch thick as blood. Shay's scribes copied contracts until wax rings piled like a battlefield of red tears. Podrick rode courier lines south toward Storm's End, east to Duskendale, west to the Mandermouth, his pony growing lean but proud. Meanwhile, Davos assembled his fleet, Black Betha at its heart, flanked by dragons, proud Stormland galleys and sail cogs, chartered on Iron Bank parchment. They sailed under moonlight fat and reeking of tallow. Tyrion watched from Maiden's Tower parapet until the last lantern fled over horizon. Shay found him there. Hood drawn against chill. You send friends into dark places. She whispered. I send numbers, he answered, but the lie weighed his tongue. They stood until gulls began to cry, and he wondered whether gulls were drawn by sun on slate, or by the rumor of dead men soon to float ashore. Davos clashed with Krakens off the Shield Islands 12 days later. Black Betha burned 2 longships, and captured a third whose deck ran red with gore, and glints of strange blue glass in its captain's beard. Yet for each ship sunk, 2 slipped past in fog, raiding to landward, vanishing like otters at dawn. Davos held the river mouth but could not choke every creek. War became a knife fight in kelp beds. Tyrion's ledgers bled as freely as sailors. Crossbow string shipments delayed at Mir. Lime kilns near Maidenpool collapsed. Carpenters in the capital demanded higher wages to replace benches burned during a riot when word of Ironborn victories reached the taverns. Sleeping little, he paced map rooms and council halls, muttering sums. One night, he drifted to the orphan dormitory within the dragon pit, meaning to lose his stress in storytelling. He found the children huddled at slit windows watching pinpricks of fire crawl along the far horizon where fishing villages burned. Their silence chilled him more than screams would. He told them a tale anyway, of a clever mouse who tricked a cat into chasing its own tail until both fell asleep and made peace. It drew some weak giggles. When he finished, a boy missing 3 fingers asked, "What if tail and teeth both bite?" Tyrion had no answer. By late autumn, Blackwater Bay stank of rotted kelp and burnt pine. Reports worsened. An Ironborn vanguard had slipped south of Old Town, sacked Saffron Cove, and vanished with 9 Tyrell grain galleys. Lords Florent and Rowan argued to recall troops from north of the Trident to defend their own shores. Edmure protested. The Riverlands still reeled from Frey treachery. Stannis threatened to hang any man who deserted royal orders. Tyrion feared a fracture Merry Maester tapes would call inevitable. He summoned Kevan Lannister to the capital. The first time the taciturn lord had visited since the end of hostilities. Kevan arrived in plain armor, silver hair stiff with road grit. Behind him rode 30 Westermen cloaks, stiff with suspicion. They met in the solar, over spiced ale that steamed between them. "The coast burns," Kevan opened, voice low as thunder in distant hills. "Your Kraken allies tamed nothing." "My lord's cry for retribution." Tyrion winced. "Harlaw obeys. Euron does not. They hate one another more than you hate either, I promise. If we stand together, we cut him out." Kevan's eyes, so like Tywin's yet softer, studied him. "Together means I follow a king I did not choose into yet another war." "Together means your son and mine," Tyrion countered. "Inherit a realm worth ruling." Kevan drank. Swallowed. Sighed. "The realm depends on numbers, you once wrote. Show me the numbers that end this." "Meneder mine." Tyrion unrolled a parchment. A shipping manifest proving that every Ironborn longship left sailcloth patch marks unique to its home island. By tracking color and weave they could predict which lord commanded which raiding wing. Pick them apart like threads. He slid across another. Contracts for Dornish galleys to relieve Davos within 3 weeks. Seawalls of 2 kingdoms crashing in one place. Kevan tapped the parchments, mouth a hard line. "And what price does the rock pay?" "Less than if Euron sails up the Sunset Sea." Tyrion laid gentle hand on his uncle's gauntlet. "Help me, and I swear the realm will remember House Lannister not for ruin, but for salvation." The silence that followed hung longer than a noose. Finally, Kevan exhaled. "Very well." True to Tyrion's projection, Dornish sails unfurled off Tarth. By the 30th day of the 9th moon, sleek dramans painted in sunrise hues, oars flashing. Led by Prince Oberyn Martell himself. Despite Doran's gouty protests, the Red Viper brought 40 warships crewed by men whose hate for Ironborn matched any Westerman's. Oberyn insisted Tyrion join him aboard the Sinistra to plan. Tyrion obliged, though the deck pitch made his stomach lurch. Oberyn waved the sickness away. "Better you empty your belly now, lion, than scatter it in fear later." He thrust a wine cup fragrant with citrus beneath Tyrion's nose. "Drink. This fortifies courage and sedates gulls." Now. Together with Davos they drafted a trap. Dornish dramans would feint north along the coast, while Betha's division hugged the shallows, luring Euron's outriders into a kill funnel between sandbars. Kevan pledged Westerman crossbowmen to line the cliffs and rain bolts onto any longship driven ashore. The plan smelled of risk and rare accord. 3 houses, once enemies now allies. Tyrion felt the precarious beauty of that, like a glass rose balanced on a blade. Battle broke at the turn of the moon when the crow-winged black wind, Euron's own Leviathan, speared out of dawn fog chasing a Dornish scout. Her hull loomed monstrous. Sails striped midnight and indigo, deck bristling with captured scorpions. But when she followed the scout into the shallows, she found half the royal fleet waiting hulled in behind sandbars and 1,000 Westermen bolts hissing from clifftop murder holes. What followed became known as the Gullet of Sighs. Tyrion watched from Betha's quarterdeck, Bronn beside him, as longship after longship ran aground on hidden sandspits, hulls splitting like eggshells. Dornish dramans raked them with flaming arrows. Stormland rams punched holes at waterline. Crossbow quarrels hammered decks until they looked like hedgehog hides. The roar was a choir of gulls and men and gods. Through smoke, Tyrion glimpsed Oberyn on Sinistra's forecastle. Spear tip red as dragonglass, leaping gaps between rails as if born of wind. Somewhere in the chaos Euron himself laughed. A high, delirious scream carrying over splinter song, before a thunderclap of pitch blew a mast apart and smoke swallowed sound. When tide receded, wreckage littered the strand. Charred Kraken timbers, severed ropes, broken oars, corpses tangled in nets. Of Euron there was no sign. Some claimed he leapt astride a sea dragon and vanished beneath foam, others that he swam north trailing dark blood. Tyrion doubted both but welcomed the rumor. Fear of the unknown would keep Ironmen cautious for a time. The victory cost dear. 3 Dromons sunk. 2 Westermen galleys lost. Davos wounded by a splinter the length of a short sword lodged in his calf. Yet the Kraken raids ceased, their threat as sudden and sharp as it had begun. When Tyrion limped through the Ashford war camp days later, exhausted, reeking of tar smoke, soldiers cheered him. "Imp's ledger wins wars," they shouted. He flushed under dirt, waved them off. Oberyn kissed him on both cheeks and promised Dornish oranges until the day Tyrion died of sweetness. He returned to King's Landing with the Red Viper in tow, the fleet's battered survivors behind them. Stannis met them on the quay, clasped Davos' wrist, and even nodded at Oberyn. Tyrion expected reprimand for risk. The king merely said, "Numbers hold," and stalked away. It was praise enough. Winter closed fist again, harsher than the last. Yet with the coast secured, grain convoys from the Reach finally arrived unmolested. Tyrion allocated surplus to northern lords still bruised by Bolton treachery. In exchange they sent timbers for royal galleys and wool for city blankets. Trade webs thickened. Dornish figs for Braavosi silver. Lys silk for river hardwood. Mirror lenses for maize from the Stormlands. The Ironbank's eyes twinkled. Loans eased. In quiet hours, Tyrion found himself carving a tiny kraken from driftwood. A trophy of sorts. He set it on the mantle, opposite a green glass blade, gifted by Arianne. Tokens of perils survived. But each token cast a shadow. A raven from the wall arrived on the 12th day of the first frost, bearing news colder than any winter gale. The dead walked beyond the frost fangs, wildling scouts whispered, and blue-eyed shadows glided through snows, leaving frost-burnt corpses that rose again. Jon Snow, Lord Commander by election, begged men, "Dragonglass, fire. If we stand divided, night endless falls." His letter ended. Tyrion read the words 3 times before sitting, heavy, beside the hearth. He remembered Jon, a black-clad boy leaning on a parapet, eager for one scrap of acceptance. Now the boy called for kingdoms. He carried the message to the council. Debates flared. Some dismissed tales as wildling moon fever. Others feared trap. Only Melisandre seemed unsurprised. Her ruby throbbed with an inner pulse. "Cold shadows," she whispered. "The ancient foe." She locked eyes with Tyrion as if sharing a secret already too old for parchment. Stannis listened silent, then ordered ravens to every lord. Supply the watch with food and arms. He dispatched a contingent north under Sir Divan Seaworth, Melisandre at their head. Bearing black-ended spears tipped with dragonglass, Tyrion had commissioned from Dragonstone's glass crafters. But dragonglass was scarce. When the tally came, Pylos reported enough for only 200 spears. Tyrion ran numbers. They bled. He needed more. And memory stirred. Old Valyrian mines on Dragonstone still held veins of volcanic glass too deep for casual diggers. He requested funds for excavation. Stannis granted grudgingly. Shay teased he had turned the kingdom into one grand ledger of debts to be repaid in breath. As shafts dug, winter deepened. Stories from the north grew bleaker. Villages gone silent beneath drifts. Rangers found frozen with ice-blue burns. More ravens begged aid. Tyrion felt the weight like iron on lungs. Wars of men seemed suddenly petty. Then, like a spark on tinder, came rumor of dragons. A merchant galley out of Korth limped into King's Landing harbor, sails torn by tempest. Its captain, an anxious spicemonger, claimed he saw 3 monstrous beasts wheeling above the Gulf of Grief. Wings wider than castle courtyards, scales shimmering black, gold and bronze. They breathed fire hot enough to turn seawater to shroud. The name all men once whispered now roared. Daenerys Targaryen. Tyrion recalled the girl queen across the narrow sea. Breaker of chains, rumored dead, rumored reborn. Dragons and ice demons, 2 legends waking in one breath. The Maester scribes would choke. Stannis responded with simple severity. If she sails west, she faces the realm united. If she aids the north, she may find welcome. Tyrion wondered if those lines could coexist. Letters flew across seas, bearing cautious inquiry. No reply came. Excavations on Dragonstone, meanwhile, struck a magma-heated pocket of dragonglass. Chunks of smoky obsidian surfaced like buried moons. Tyrion ordered half-shaped into spear points, half stored for unknown uses. Hauling them north required wagons reinforced with iron ribs to prevent shards from slicing through. He entrusted Podrick with escort along the King's Road. Bronn riding point guide out. Shay fretted, but Podrick accepted as if it were honor itself. On the day they departed, snowflakes drifted so thick the air tasted of silence. Tyrion clasped Pod's shoulder. "Remember," he said, "numbers count lives. Yours counts most to me." Pod blushed crimson. Bronn merely winked and promised to bring the boy back heavier in coin. They vanished into white. Winter punished the fleet of ravens too. Many froze mid-flight. Yet one crisp afternoon a bird bore the scrawl of Devon Seaworth. The Watch, reinforced by northern clans and the dragonglass spears, had driven the dead from the Weeping Pass and torched whites by the dozen. Morale soared, yet greater hordes gathered beyond, and unnatural blizzards shielded them. Melisandre's note accompanied, ink scarlet. "The great other stirs. Flames alone do not suffice. We need fire beyond mortal forging." Beneath it, a single word burned Tyrion's thoughts. Dragons. He carried the message to the king as bells told none. They conferred alone in the stone drum's tower library, among dust-rimmed tomes, scenting the air of dry parchment and secrets. Stannis leaned on a table, gaunt shadows making canyon lines across his cheeks. "Suppose the girl comes," the king said at last. "3 dragons against an army of ice. Do we bend knee or stand oath hard?" Tyrion rubbed eyes gritty from candle smoke. "We stand as hosts. Offer alliance, shared purpose. The realm remembers your justice. Dragons might respect it." Stannis' eyebrows angled down. "Dragons respect nothing but fear." "Then show fear has fled the realm," Tyrion answered, though he was not sure. They drafted a letter. Invitation to Queen Daenerys Stormborn, guaranteeing safe harbor, offering counsel and resources if she aided in the war against death. They signed king in hand. Varys ensured it would cross seas on the swiftest sails. Then they waited, through storms that rattled window shutters, through nights when the sky cracked open and flung shards of ice onto slate roofs, through mornings when bells rang for wanderers frozen outside the gates. Podrick returned sooner than expected, 12 days ahead of schedule, frost-bitten but breathing, bearing 2 spears as tokens. Bronn claimed he cut travel time by riding night and day past Bolton scouts who tried to tax their passage. "Paid. M. steel," Bronn said, grinning blood on snow. Podrick's eyes held new steel too. Perhaps wars carve more than swords can. On Pod's heels came a raven from Winterfell. Now under Lady Sansa's regency, Jon away at the wall. Sansa thanked the crown for aid and enclosed lists of refugee camps along the long lake, requiring bread. Tyrion sent her thrice what she asked. When Sansa's second letter arrived, addressed in a surer hand, Tyrion opened it in private. She wrote of lone knights ruling while snows iced ramparts, of wolves howling wild and free beyond the walls. Of memories she carried of a soft-voiced dwarf, who once married her under cruel coercion, yet spared her cruelty. She thanked him for measuring justice in loaves, not chains. Tyrion sat long after reading, staring at the hearth until embers collapsed. A month later, dragons answered. At dawn, a shout rose from the bluff tower. Tyrion, roused from half-sleep over ledgers, rushed to rampart in slippers and threadbare cloak. A ship approached. The Stormknight, a Lyseni carrack long missing, rigging tattered but sails intact. At her mast flew a banner unseen since the fall of Dragonstone to rebels. Black with red 3-headed dragon. Harbor guards aimed scorpions, but Tyrion waved stay. The ship slipped into berth, deck crawling with sailors tanned by fiercer suns. They lowered gangplank. Down it strode Ser Jorah Mormont, exile no longer, armor dulled by sandstorms, eyes hauntingly resolute. Behind him minced a girl with mismatched eyes and dusty robes. Missandei, once slave of Astapor. They bowed before Tyrion. Ser Jorah spoke. I bear words for King Stannis from Daenerys Stormborn. Tyrion escorted them to the throne hall. Stannis descended steps to meet them. The Iron Bank envoys watched from side aisles, measuring every heartbeat. Her Grace receives your invitation, Jorah said, voice echoing. She prepares to sail with dragons in her train. She seeks only assurances. Safe anchorage, recognition of her status, and parley to discuss combined war against the dead. Stannis inclined head a fraction. The throne she names mine still. Missandei answered. Her Grace claims birthright contested by many. She would weigh justice in council. The hall stirred. Melisandre's ruby flared. Tyrion stepped forward. Justice is the coin we spend daily. Let her come. Let dragons and deer together hunt the darkness. The king's eyes flicked to Tyrion, then to the envoys. Send answer. The realm welcomes the mother of dragons as ally in war. We grant Dragonstone as landing and parley. Nenderol. Ser Jorah's shoulders eased. Missandei smiled like dawn glimpsed after prison. Bear in mind, Stannis warned. Allies keep oaths. Betrayal burns hotter than wildfire. They bowed. Preparations for a dragon queen seized the capital like pageant fever laced with dread. Masons strengthened pier pylons to bear the weight of beasts, rumored to flatten siege towers. Blacksmiths forged great manacles, in case, though none dared voice purpose. Alchemists refreshed wildfire stocks despite Tyrion's curse. He diverted funds instead to clay kilns turning out dragonglass arrows by the thousand. Shay walked the bustling docks arm in arm with him, marveling. Will dragons scorch this rot from bricks? She wondered. Half hopeful. Half terrified. They scorch everything, he said, but perhaps they leave gardens for us to reseed. At night he dreamed green flame mixing with hotter red, of wings blotting stars, of a throne melting under dragon breath, until only ash remained for counting. Days lengthened toward spring. Then sails blossomed on the horizon. Dark, crimson-striped, sails of geese and Korth, of Myrenes triremes and Volantine war galleys, chartered or captured. Above them, three shapes soared, Drogon immense as cathedral spire, Rhaegal emerald bright, Viserion pale gold. Their cries cracked the sky. Small folk fell to knees. Gold cloaks froze mid-parade drill. Tyrion stood beside Stannis on the Mudgate battlements, wind clawing cloaks. He could feel the heat of dragonfire, though it burned distant air. Beside him Melisandre whispered, Fire answers fire. Tyrion whispered back, Fire exalts or consumes. The fleet anchored off Dragonstone first. Ravens confirmed that Daenerys landed without incident. Townsfolk there still worshipped Targaryen legend like old gods. Tyrion sent ships laden with bread, hay, and lantern oil. In exchange Daenerys dispatched lords of her own, the unsullied Captain Grey Worm, the my-sexed healer Miri, and a Dothraki outrider, with braids long as promises. They surveyed the city's grand plazas and narrow lanes. Silent but appraising. 1 week later, the Queen herself crossed the bay, aboard a slim black skiff. Flanked by 2 dragons circling overhead, she disembarked at King's Landing's Royal Harbor, clad in white-scaled jerkin, silver gold hair loose in the wind. When her feet touched the jetty, fire seemed to ripple through the water. Tyrion bowed deep. She lifted him, smiling. I remember your counsel from far away, she said, and know it honest. Stannis awaited in the throne hall. Their meeting stretched hours, closed doors, only Tyrion and 2 scribes present. They debated titles, oaths, strategies against the cold foe. At last they emerged together onto the sept stairs where throngs assembled. Stannis raised his voice. The realm stands at the edge of night. We will not fall alone. We rise together. Baratheon hammer and Targaryen flame. Daenerys spoke next, words bright with pledge. So long as darkness stalks living earth, my dragons and I soar as shield, not scourge. Crowds cheered, some fearful, more hopeful. In that echo Tyrion felt a hinge of history swing. Council sessions ballooned, heated with new ideas and older grievances. Daenerys demanded abolition of debtors' prisons. Stannis insisted on measured steps. Tyrion juggled budgets strained by dragon feed and unsullied wages. He convinced Daenerys to send her Dothraki to till waiting farmlands. Stallions dragged plows as well as ride, he quipped. And they, oddly, took to earth like seed. Messages from north quickened. The dead massed at the gorge. Jon Snow's third raven pleaded for fire and flight. Daenerys ordered immediate march, but Stannis counseled staging posts along King's Road to supply dragons. Tyrion backed him. Logistics win wars, dragons start. Daenerys conceded with visible impatience. While armies gathered, Tyrion supervised forging of giant obsidian-tipped ballista bolts designed by a Carthene engineer. He visited the foundry at night, heat scorching cheeks as molten glass hissed into molds. He imagined each spear a promise, scribbled in black glass. Shay watched his workload with worried eyes. "Do not lose yourself," she begged. He told her stories of figures turning to swords, but promised to return. And so the march began, unsullied, Stormlander spears, Riverland bowmen, Dornish outriders, and a host of Northmen led by Lady Sansa herself. Above them dragons swooped, wing beats like 500 drums. King's Road became Dragon Road. Villagers poured from huts to gape, some crossing hearts, others lifting babes in supplication. Tyrion rode midway in the column, book strapped to saddle. Podrick at his side, Bronn scouting. Davos commanded wagons of dragonglass. The sight of winter woods stripped bare, branches like bone fingers clawing sky, set chill deeper than wind. When they reached the last hearth, snowflakes grew fatter, swirling in squalls that howled like wolves. Jon met them on courtyard dusted white, armor black, eyes shadow-ringed but bright with hope. He and Daenerys embraced beneath swirling flakes. Rumor of love already buzzed. Tyrion shook Jon's hand. Silent gratitude traded. War Council convened in the Great Hall as hearths roared. Jon outlined. Night King's main host made for the Shivering Sea, to cross ice and sweep south along the coast, evading watch garrisons. They would strike first at Carhold as bait, then veer inland. Strategy: pin them at the fork of White Knife between Frozen River and Ridgeline. Dragons burn from above. Northmen and spears hold choke. Tyrion proposed moving grain, yet ungathered, from White Harbor to feed survivors, and sowing tar pits along predicted White Line to channel their advance. All agreed. The next dawn, scouts confirmed the dead only leagues north. Blue auroras flickering from their ranks, cold so intense sap burst trunks ahead of them. Snow fell heavier, muting sound until even dragons' roars seemed blankets. Tyrion stood near a trench where unsullied shoveled oil-soaked peat. Jon joined him, eyes on slate sky. "The dead do not haggle," he said. "No," Tyrion answered, "but numbers still count them." Night fell. First came silence, then a crunch like distant heavy grindstones, the march of thousands of frozen feet. Snow stirred phosphorescent beneath moon-swallowed clouds. Tyrion stood atop earthen wall behind the trench, hand tight on dragonglass dagger, though he could not wield as soldier. Shay was safe miles behind with healers. Still his heart hammered like drum of warships. Shapes emerged. Skeletal elk bearing riders of ice, hounds with eyes of hell light, armored wights whose blades misted air. At their rear, tallest tower, the Night King rode pale, stallion, crown of hoarfrost. Eyes lantern bright. Dragons screamed overhead. Fire gushed, orange versus eternal blue. Snow flashed steam. Ice cracked. Whites ignited like dry reeds. Unsullied ranks thrust obsidian pikes with machine precision, spearing living dead who hissed soundless. Bolts from Tyrion's great scorpions whistled, obsidian heads exploding whites to shards. Tar pits ignited, funneling masses. Yet still they came, crawling over own burning dead. Night King raised arms, Wings of death. A second wave of corpses heaved from snow previously torched. They marched, still burning. Fire no deterrent. Dragons hammered them again, but frostwind from Night King's raised hand blasted Drogon's left wing, coating it in rime. The beast shrieked, faltered. Daenerys urged Dragon higher. Flames reignited, but fear rippled. On ground, Jon led charge of Northmen into breach. Sansa's banner flew beside Stark Direwolf, her command of archers loosing dragonglass arrows like midnight hail. Tyrion shouted logistic orders. Oil to the left flank. Spears tighten second rank. He felt strangely alive, each decision a bead in necklace of survival. A horn blared 3 blasts from ridge. Davos wagons arrived, bringing fresh pikes. Podrick leapt atop wagon, tossing spears to gaps. Bronn strutted along trench edge, crossbow singing. Still numbers threatened to overwhelm. Tyrion saw Night King advance through chaos toward the river's edge, raising sword of milk blue light. If he broke line, rout would follow. Tyrion's throat closed. He remembered smallfolk children at Dragon Pit, their quiet eyes. He turned to Maester Pylos, clinging to parapet. Signal the reserve glass. Pylos hesitated. But my lord. Now. Tyrion roared. From rear wagons, Davos men uncrated colossal spheres of obsidian, fused with wildfire. A design Tyrion prayed would work. Dragon glass shrapnel, wedded to green inferno. They rolled them down ice slopes like black meteors. At cliff edge they struck ice. Shattered. Wild hazard green roaring outward, carrying razor glass shards in every radius. Night King's guard vanished in blast of jade carnage. Ice demons disintegrated, blue light snuffed. Night King himself wheeled mount. Frost armor scorched, but alive. Trench line held. Dawn's first pallor crept above mountains. Bleeding faint rose across drifts. Night King glared at approaching sun. One moment's stillness, then turned, rallying survivors into retreat northward beneath cover of unnatural storm he summoned. Jon started to pursue, Daenerys banking dragons for chase, but Tyrion signaled horns. Hold. Terrain unknown ahead. When the dead melted into blizzard, silence fell again, broken by weeping and groans of wounded. Smoke coiled upward into dawn, carrying stench of burned flesh and obsidian dust. They had survived first onslaught. In aftermath, Tyrion walked battlefield, where snow turned gray and glass fragments glittered like constellations fallen to earth. Bodies of friends lay among enemies, unsullied turned statues of ice. Northmen hugging swords, Dornish riders scorched. He knelt by each group, lips shaping names he tallied into ledgers none would see. Podrick approached, battered helm under arm. Sir Bronn says we'll count this a ledger of hope. Tyrion touched his sleeve. A ledger still. We balance it by living well. Ben. Queen Daenerys landed Drogon softly beside charred clearing, face streaked with soot and tears. She dismounted, walked toward Tyrion, eyes questioning. We won, yet he lives. Battles seldom end neatly, Tyrion answered. Stannis arrived on lathered horse, grim but unbowed. We will hunt him. Steel, flame, dragons. All. Tyrion looked north where storm still brewed. Yes, he said, but not hungry, not ragged. He turned to Daenerys. Will your dragons bear grain instead of flame one more march? We feed spear arms before they lift swords again. Then so. She regarded him, then nodded. Dragons are harbingers, of fire, or of life. She turned to her beast. Carry bread, my child. So dragons carried sacks of barley and rye from White Harbor storehouses to forward camps while injured heal. Stannis sent ravens for more glass and spears. Tyrion revised manifests. Sansa oversaw pyres for fallen. One night by King's campfire Davos strummed broken lute strings. Tyrion listened, half asleep, when Melisandre approached him. Flames danced in her eyes. The ledger of life you keep is thread in Lord of Light's weave, she said. I keep no lord, Tyrion muttered. But you keep fire. She smiled faintly. Never fear darkness when you have flame to count. He wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. He slept beneath waning moon, dreaming not of ledgers, but of children chasing orange-winged dragons across fields of summer grain. Weeks later, they marched again, this time deeper into haunted forest, through snowdrifts taller than men. There, at shores of the shivering sea frozen solid, they found Night King's horde, massed around jagged ice spire fortress that pulsed a pulse of corpse cold. Dragons could not approach. Frost winds battered them away. Eager begun. They fought not one battle but a dozen over nights lit by aurora borealis, teal, violet, impossible hues flickering like celestial wildfire. Dragon glass, dragon flame, wildfire bombs. They chipped at dead ranks, yet for every white felled, another rose. Tyrion realized with hollow dread. Kill the Night King or war never ends. Quilted in furs, he pored over maps with Jon, Daenerys, and Stannis. Observations showed Night King always rode at center, guarded by 4 lieutenants of pale mist. Melisandre proposed killing them in ritual of light. Davos proposed long arrow of dragon glass. Jon and Daenerys wanted personal sword and dragon fire. Tyrion studied supply counts dwindling as quickly as lives. He concluded, 1 strike team. Small, swift, unexpected. He volunteered himself. They protested, but he insisted. Dead expect kings and queens at gates, not dwarfs in shadows. Bronn seconded, until told stealth not stabbing. He still came. Podrick refused to be left. Grey Worm added discipline. Melisandre imbued dragonglass shards with whatever prayer she whispered. Under moonless sky they slipped through ice fissures, guided by Tyrion's memory of drainage paths he had charted from earlier sorties. Frost bit lungs, silence ringing like bells of glass. They reached outer palisade of white ice, where spectral guards stood unmoving. Bronn's crossbow sent 2 to stillness. Grey Worm slit throats of silent watchers who bled no blood. Inside, at Ice Plateau, Night King sat astride skeletal elk, watching battle lines afar. Tyrion's heart pounded loud enough he feared shatter shards. He readied a small, throwing spear tip of etched dragonglass painted with wildfire resin. Not for strength. For aim and quiet killer's mark. He thought of father, of chains forged, of coin counted. He thought of boy with melted doll. Of Sansa's letter, of Shay's laugh. He stepped forward from shadow. Night King turned, blue fire meeting green dwarf eyes. They locked. Frozen time. Then Tyrion hurled spear. It struck just above breastplate ridge. Wildfire resin ignited on contact with icy aura, a silent green flash. Crack like breaking world. Night King's chest split luminous with internal blue flame that guttered then died. Replaced by hollow shadow. In stunned hush, the ancient fell from elk, shattering into shards of frost and dust. Across distant fields, whites collapsed like puppets cut from strings. Dragons roared. Aurora flickered out, replaced by soft starlight. Bronn whistled low. That's one for your ledgers, eh? Tyrion kneeled amid steaming fragments, chest heaving, tears freezing upon lashes. Podrick laid hand on his shoulder. Grey Worm saluted silent. They returned at dawn to cheers that trembled snow. Jon embraced Tyrion, calloused gloves rough on his scar. Daenerys knelt to meet his eyes. A single coin tipped scales. She said. Stannis clasped his forearms in soldier's grip. Numbers deliver victory, the king conceded. Tyrion only murmured, lives delivered victory. Numbers merely kept count. The dead remained dead. Spring at last thrust spear through snows. Camps dismantled. Men and women trudged home to sow new life. Dragons rested on ridges warming eggs they might one day lay. In King's Landing bells told not funeral but renewal. A great council assembled. Lords, captains, even small folk, delegates from guilds, to forge a new charter of shared rule. Daenerys, though beloved, ceded claim to Iron Throne in favor of council monarchy. A crown elected for spans of 7 years from among great houses, then surrendered. Stannis, stern but fair, accepted first term under charter. to be followed by successor, chosen by council. Tyrion drafted the charter's fiscal codes, embedding protections for small folk tithes, war orphan funds, and dragonglass reserve stockpiles. He wrote until quills dulled, until ink stained fingertips forever black. At final signing in the Sept of Baelor, Myrcella lit candles for the fallen. Shireen read the clauses of education and bred rights. Podcasters of knowledge from Old Town set to copy the charter across realm. When scroll sealed, Tyrion slipped from applause into courtyard where sun showered marble. Shay waited beneath almond tree blossoming pink-white. He took her hand. "It is done," she asked. "For now," he replied. "Numbers balanced." She smiled. "Then come, Lord of Ledgers. Time to spend life on more than counts." She led him toward streets alive with laughter, toward stalls of figs and spiced wine, toward children chasing kites, shaped like dragons whose wings were red and green and gold, soaring not to destroy but to dance. Behind him, stone towers rose, banners fluttering of stag and dragon, intertwined, and somewhere a boy told a tale of mouse and cat finding peace. Tyrion Lannister, Hand of Two Crowns, Dwarf of Accounts, allowed the noise of living world to fill him. Ledger set aside, quill finally still.